What's up, everybody? Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Keisha King Show. I'm your host, Keisha King Benton. Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me? Can you hear me? Hi, Megan. Hi, Katie. Hey, Tam. Thanks, Tam. Thanks for becoming a member. Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you for your support. Let's see. Trying to make sure that okay, we're good. Oh my gosh, you guys have no idea what I have been going through for the last probably about an hour trying to make sure the sound was good. Anyway, I don't know what that's all about. My ring has been shipped off to be fixed. Hi, Instagram. Welcome. We are talking about being Black and Christian. Hello, Facebook. Hey, DT. We're talking about being Black and Christian. On this channel, as believers, we know that you cannot be ideologically Black and a Christian. If you disagree, click the link, come on up, let's have the discussion. I'm going to put the link in on TikTok. Oh, I'm sorry, TikTok. On Instagram. We're not on TikTok tonight. We're doing Instagram because I think maybe it'll be just a little bit better over there. Have more engagement. So let's see if we can do this. Let's see. Click here to debate. Let's see what happens over there on all right, so yes, on Instagram you can click the button there that says click here to debate, and then you can come on over. All right, let's get on into it. Diamond Dave, hello, welcome. Let's see. Oh, the Facebook link. Let's do, sorry, you guys, we're doing some housekeeping here. Trying to make sure that everybody, here you go, Megs. That's the Facebook link. Thank you, thank you. All right, let's go ahead and dive right in. I got some uncomfortable stuff. Here we go.
Shame to be betrayed by the folk who.
Wait a minute.
God. Before I take more from it, I'm going to add something to it. Christian nationalism is a betrayal to Christianity. It endorses evil with scripture. It idolizes a man who is an unrepentant sinner. It mistreats the poor and the foreigner with impunity. It ignores the fundamental teaching of Jesus Christ. It is a betrayal to Christianity.
Now, it's so funny that he will say now white Christianity is a betrayal to biblical Christianity. And that is Reverend Dr. Howard John Wesley. It's interesting how they will say that white Christianity is a betrayal of biblical Christianity, but Black Christianity is not a betrayal of biblical Christianity. How does that work? Hi, Megan. Oh, Megan. Oh, okay. So Megan's over on the Facebook over there. Okay, gotcha. Quiet Christy. Hi, Quiet Christy. She asked, what are we debating? We are debating if you can be Black and a Christian. I say, as a Bible believing Christian, you cannot be, because being Black is more than just your pigment. It is an ideology. It is a political class, an oppressed class, perpetually oppressed. So you cannot be Black and Christian. That's what we are debating. Candy says race first versus Christian first. Basically, yes, exactly. Exactly. All right. So we heard him, Howard Wesley. Let's and thank you, Mr. Devonta Palmer. Well, thank you over on Instagram. All right, let's finish. Here we go. Here's
To
another.
lay that question before you and before this nation, what did you really gain by what you've done? Did destroying DEI get you a raise on your job? Did overturning Roe versus Wade lower your health care costs? Did deporting immigrants finally get you a chance for that job you've been waiting on that immigrant stole from you? Does defunding scholarship mark for people of color give your child a better chance of getting into Harvard University? Does weakening the black vote lower your gas prices? Because I got bad news for you. Gas ain't just high for black folk and women. Gas is high for all of y'all.
You know, I have to say this. If you profess yourself to be a Christian, but you are constantly sending people everywhere else but to the foot of the cross to fix their problems, you're not really a Bible believing Christian. Okay, because you cannot be a Christian, understand what Christ really did, understand why he did what he did, understand that you are a sinner, born in sin, shaped in iniquity, and that Christ came so that you may have life and life everlasting, which you were cut off from for because of humanity's disobedience. If you're not pointing people to the cross, to Jesus, then I don't know what is the government, how is the government really going to help you? Because at the end of the day, you know, the Bible tells us that we should cast all of our cares onto Christ, not onto the Republican Party, the Democrat Party. So why aren't these pastors and preachers and ministers pointing people to Jesus if they say that they believe Jesus? I just don't understand. I just don't. DT says, let's see. The presence of illegal immigrants affects more than job opportunities. Fool. Exactly. We pay for their care out of our tax dollars. For sure. It's not a you know, it doesn't work. This man clearly doesn't understand the way the American system works. So let me address this. So Myron Scott says, how can you be a Christian worried about gas prices? Sounds political. I mean, it's not that we as Christians that we shouldn't care about politics. Please don't misunderstand me. I'm saying that if you are a pastor and when people are going through these things because of, you know, the world systems, we got you know, just different things happening in the world, and people get nervous about gas prices, about food prices, about this or that, we should be pointing them to the one who we gave our life to. If we really believe what the Bible says, then we should be saying, you know, telling congregations and stuff not to worry, to lean on God. If we really believe that our God cares for us, and that you know, what does the scripture say? I have never seen the righteous forsaken nor his seed begging bread. You know, we need to lean on those things, not the government, okay? Because the government cannot give you life everlasting. Let's see. Grace Minister Kev says Philippians 3:19, their ends is destruction, their God is their belly, and their glory is in their shame, who mind earthly things. You know, it's so interesting how the Bible really does cover all of this stuff. Mr. Devonte Palmer over on Instagram says, so you're saying we can either be one or the other. Exactly. You cannot serve two masters. You will love one and hate the other. If we were to pull back the spiritual curtains, so to speak, the natural curtains, and see into the spiritual realm, there's only two sides. You will see the kingdom of God and you will see the kingdom of darkness. And everybody know on the spiritual side, everybody knows where everybody is. There's no ambiguity. You either are with God or you're not. We are the only ones, you know, the human beings. We like to try to say, well, maybe we can be a little bit over here, but God don't work like that. The spirit realm, the spiritual realm does not work that way. If you disagree, click the link, come on up and let's discuss. So let's finish this so-called pastor.
What seats in the administration did you get? Y'all were campaigning, and they didn't give none of y'all an office. What did you really gain by selling your people out? Boy, it's getting hot in here. I came.
Yeah, it's getting hot in here because maybe you might be headed somewhere that's hot with all of this lying that you're doing. And I don't mean to be so direct, but when you are telling people to go and vote for abortion, anti-biblical marriage ethics, transgendering children, you know, a pulling back of police in places where they need police because there's a lot of death and crime. If you are advocating for that and you tell me who doesn't vote for that I am somehow selling somebody out, then I guess I'm sold out. Actually, I am sold out. I'm sold out for the Lord. That's who I am. I'm a sellout. I'm a sellout for the Lord because I'm not going along with this world system. And the only reason that these people make this system sound, you know, so great and wonderful is because they're Black. That's the whole thing. They can be in the pulpit selling people all kinds of death, destruction, and just decadence, and tell you, look, it's good over here. This is what Black people do. If you're on time, if you are a law-abiding citizen, if you believe in, you know, peace, if you want, you know, if you don't want to be fighting with, you know, people who happen to who happen to disagree with you, um, that's they want to paint that as somehow you're participating in white culture. That's white Christianity. If you live your life according to these people's rules, you will not succeed. Just take a look at the quote unquote Black community, whose lives are very much centered around the Black church. And since the 60s, this is the kind of crap that they've been pushing out of it from the pulpit. And what has it gotten anyone? More death, more decadence, more destruction. There is nothing good in this Blackness, in this race idolatry. Even if it was whiteness, there is nothing good in you lifting up a race. But these people do it from the pulpit and say, this is what Christ wants us to do. You are a liar and the truth is not in you.
Now, before you think I'm just talking about some cowardly congressperson or some scared senator or some jittery justice, allow me to tell you that I ain't just talking about them, I'm talking about some of us. Some of us have sold ourselves out by not using the voice and the privilege and the opportunity that God has given to us. If you don't vote, you have sold us out. If you're part of that generation that sits at home and says, I don't like either candidate or either party, you have betrayed us. If the only time you voted was to make marijuana legal, you sold us out. Every time you sit silent on the sideline, and every time you witness evil and decide to say nothing, you are complicit with corruption. You are an accomplice to the administration. You are an accessory to injustice. And God sent me here this morning to raise up a body of Christians with some courage to use their voice, who are not afraid to declare this is not of God. I need some folk who will not grow weary in well-doing. Some folk who know, let the redeemed of the Lord say so.
Listen, all that hollering and slobbering all over the mic is not helping anybody. You're not setting anybody free. Oh, if you go and vote, then you're actually, that's when you're really doing something for the community. When you go and vote Democrat now, not anything else. You got to vote Democrat in order to, for them to consider you to be really doing something for the community. Because if you just vote in line with your actual biblical faith, true biblical Christianity, you would never vote for a Democrat. You would never do it. It's not worth the sacrifice. What they are pushing isn't worth it. But this dude says that if you aren't doing that, then you are selling everybody out. You're not using your voice. You're not being a good Christian. You're not being a good Christian if you don't go and vote for the Democrats. Because trust me and believe, they're not just saying vote for, vote, just make sure you vote. It would almost be better if you don't vote if you are a Christian. If you just sat out, it would make more logical sense. It would be more biblically aligned if you said, you know what, I don't support this system, the world system, so I'm not going to vote. That would be more in line than saying, if you do vote, go make sure you vote for the kingdom of darkness. If you're going to vote, as Christians, this man is in the pulpit is basically saying, if you're going to vote, make sure you vote for the kingdom of darkness. And then he has the audacity to say that God sent him to tell us to vote for these people. That's a lie. My Bible tells me that that's a lie. Oh my goodness. So, we also talk about the Jude 3 project. And yeah, I've been, finding more stuff with them too. And so we're going to take a look at them too. Let me read some of these super chats. Let's see. Tam says, Keisha, I am a sellout for God as well. I am not of this world. Amen. Thank you, Tam, for the $5 super chat. I agree, and what I'm just saying, it's such a cheap trinket that they're trying to sell you. Oh, look, Make sure you vote. Make sure you vote for the Democrats. Make sure, sending all these people, if you're downtrodden and, just telling people that they're oppressed all the time and you're never going to come out of oppression. And, the land that you live in, if you happen to be Black, there's nothing for you here. I mean, who would want to be a part of that faith? What kind of God? You hear these preachers and they always begging and protesting and snotting and slobbering all over mics and stuff and breathing all hard, and there's nothing valuable, there's nothing edifying that they're selling, that they're giving, that they're offering. It's just be oppressed, be hopeless, vote for the Democrats, vote for abortion, vote for same-sex marriage, vote for trans. Everything that they want for you is literally anti-God, but they want you to believe that this is hope. Like, who would want to serve a God that this is the option? These people been preaching and saying this stuff for 60 something years, dang near, if not more. And all they can tell you is that you're oppressed. Oh, well, Jesus was on the side of the oppressed. Jesus was on the side of the oppressed, and he was on the side of the poor, and he was on the side of he also came to save our souls. He did this little thing, he died on the cross. An innocent God literally died on a cross, came incarnate through Mary, innocent, took on all of your sin, my sin, all of our sins. He really did do that for you and me. We don't ever hear that. We don't ever hear the hope in that we can have everlasting life, that we can now be in communication with the one who made us, with the one who made everything. You can actually talk to him. He can actually lead you and guide you in all righteousness and truth in this world, on this side of heaven. They don't ever tell you about that part. Oh, he's on the side of the oppressed. What does that even mean? What does that mean? Katie says, we are overcomers in Jesus. Amen. Not oppressed. But the James Cones of the world and all of these, Black preachers, quote unquote, Black preachers, all they want to sell you is oppression. Because I don't know how they get around the scripture that says, whom the Son sets free is free indeed. Now, I don't know about you, but if you're telling me that I am perpetually oppressed, that doesn't sound like freedom. Now, I know I know the left, the Marxists, they like to redefine terms and they like to change up words. But on what planet can you tell me, even in you're so enlightened, your enlightenment progressive mind, how can you tell me that being oppressed is actually that's not slavery? That's not bondage. That is bondage. They're trying to sell you bondage, but package it as freedom. Oh, look, we're Christians, but you're oppressed if you're Black. Sorry, I don't know what to tell you. Our faith, they try to make it seem like, I don't know, but the faith that we are in, it doesn't deal with that. That's not true biblical Christianity. That is why so many Black Americans can't get out of their situations, because you're looking to the government instead of God. All of these people are teaching you, these so-called pastors and teachers, they're teaching you to be more reliable relying on the world system. They're teaching you to lean into your flesh. The Bible says the flesh has to die daily. They teach you the literal opposite of everything that the Bible says, but says, oh, no, this is Christianity. We're here to tear the idol down. If you disagree, click the link in the chat and come on up. DT says any church supporting the Democrat Party is a church that supports everything the Democrat stands for. The rainbow, gender mutilation of your children, abortion up into the ninth month, etc. That's a fact. Because you can't look. We have a two-party system, and when the Democrats say, "Here's what we got," we've taken God off of our platform. We support everything that DT just said, abortion up into the ninth month and beyond in California. I don't know if that actually passed, but they were definitely looking into it. Yes, the gender mutilation, all of that stuff. You have to say, okay, I am willing to go with all of this in support of what? So you can get what some fake subsidy that the government is going to give you so you can get free health care, which you're not entitled to, which so you can get just mooching off of the government. It's not worth it. Jay Merritt, hello Jay Merritt. He says they believe Jesus is God when he said that the Father is the one true God. I believe that Jesus is God because he is God. I believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. That's what I believe. Let's see. Julian Padilla says the battle is won already. It has. It's like it already, but not yet, because we're in time and God is outside of time. He says Satan influences a lot. Indeed he does. Indeed he does. But God is still in control, and Satan is no match for God. That's why when you are in Christ, he has already overcome the world. So Satan is no match for you either in Christ Jesus. But you can't get to that type of living. You can't get to that reality because you believe that you are oppressed. You will never see the victory, the glory of God in your life if you constantly believe that you are oppressed. It's just a fact. Asa Wood says, look to the heavenly government. I mean, I think they're joking, but that's what they put before you to do. Look towards the heavenly government. Click the link in the chat or on Instagram on the bottom of the screen there if you disagree. And we can have a good conversation about this because it is definitely something that needs to be addressed. Let's see. All right, let's continue. Okay, I don't know what that.
So when I come based upon my African-American lived experience, I believe very definitively that if the gospel is not liberative in spiritual and social, then it's not the gospel.
That's right.
But if I make my gospel the only gospel, then I run the risk of putting in cultural dominance. Can I say that? Let me shut up. Yeah. So the Southern Baptists, this is not unfair, not the Southern Baptists. There was a statement released about social justice. And the statement said, in essence, that social justice was a distraction from the gospel of Jesus Christ. Now, you don't have to agree with social gospel, but to say it's a distraction from the gospel, to me, that runs the risk of running your cultural dominance next to or into the gospel dominance. That's what I mean. So let me stop there.
Let's back this up a little bit.
So when I come based upon my African-American lived experience, I believe very definitively that if the gospel is not liberative in spiritual and social, then it's not the gospel.
That's right.
But if I make my gospel the only gospel, then I run the risk of putting in cultural dominance.
See, what they're trying to say is white people, white Christians are how they worship. They're the ones who rightfully interpret the Bible and follow a strict a conservative strict biblical doctrine. That is norm. That's the norm. That's what he means by I gotta make sure that my Christianity, he means being black, which by the way, I mean this dude is like barely look, it's all look at this dude. He wants to be so black, y'all. Look, he's yes, but my black lived experience. Exactly, quiet Christy. Girl, I thought he was too for a second. This is ridiculous. These people, anyway, but he wants to be so black. He wants you to see that, I'm down with the people. What he means is white Christianity is actually following the true scripture because it is a narrow way. It is only one way. Like truth is truth. It ain't my truth and your truth and all of this. The truth, the Bible, the true and living word of God is the truth. So anyone who is practicing something outside of that, you are practicing your own doctrine, your own. You can't call it Christianity. It's another Jesus. It's a false teacher, a false doctrine, a doctrine of demons. But he's cool with that because black theology, which is a thing for those of you who don't know, black theology is different than biblical theology. It looks like we got some new people here. And since we do, I just want to show you this so you know that that we're not making stuff up over here. These are their words. Okay. They say that true Christianity, or they say that black Christianity, black theology is different. They acknowledge that it's a different way to look at the Bible. We're going to view the Bible through the lens of being black. This is what they say. So I want to show you guys this. We'll get back to this Reverend Doctor. Yes, Jujubee, thank you so much. And DT, welcome to anyone just joining. Hit that like button, please. As you walk through, share the video, subscribe, and make sure, if you want, to become a member. So, let's see. Okay. All right. We're not going to read the whole thing. Don't worry. Don't worry. But we are going to read just a little. All right, here we go. This says, to white churchmen. Can you guys see that? Right here. To white churchmen, power and love. As black men who were long ago forced out of the white church to create and to wield black power. Okay? Listen to that statement. As black men who were long ago forced out of the white church to create and to wield black power, we fail to understand the emotional quality of the outcry of some clergy against the use of the term today. We don't understand what y'all are crying about. Okay, so what if we want to claim Christianity but do this black power thing? Okay? we don't do your whole order. We like chaos, all right? Oh, I'm sorry. This was written by Gayrard S. Wilmore and like 48 other pastors. They signed this back in July 31st, 1966. It's called the Black Power Statement by the National Committee of Negro Churchmen. Okay. This was a concerted effort to change what true biblical Christianity is and turn it around and reimagine it and see it through the lens of the Black Power movement, basically, in a nutshell. You have to go back and watch some of my other lives. It is not enough to answer that integration is the solution, for it is precisely the nature of the operation of power under some forms of integration which is being challenged. The Negro Church was created as a result of the refusal to submit to the indignities of a false kind of integration in which all power was in the hands of white people. Now, I don't know about you, but does this seem like a biblically based document to you? Does it? The bottom line, which we have our beef, says, why is it okay for Christians to be victims based on belief, but no one else can even with evidence? Example, Christians have claimed persecution since day one while being the number one religion ever. Okay, oh my gosh. Well, I don't know. The Bible prophesizes this. Jesus says that you will be persecuted for my name's sake. So, as Christians, we have been persecuted for our beliefs. However, Christianity has spread despite those things, despite. And it is not, you're not the victim mindset is when you're not actually a victim, but you claim victimhood. We're not talking, you're talking about people who are actually being murdered and killed. That's still happening today. That's a real persecution. We're talking about Black Americans, American Blacks, who are the most prosperous Black Americans in the entire world, but have so much whining and complaining to do in America, pretending like they are victims. That is the problem. That's the problem. It's not actual Christian persecution. It is this fake victim narrative that is the problem, especially when you are a believer. Those people that are actually persecuted, murdered, they are martyrs. their lives are literally being taken because they profess Christ. So let's see, we have Diamond Dave joining us. Let's see. Hello, Diamond Dave. How are you?
What's up? First time calling in. I think this is like the second video of yours that I've watched, but it
Okay.
seems like an
Welcome,
interesting
welcome.
channel. Yeah. There's kind of some stuff to address here.
Okay. Well, let me
So
ask you, are you a Christian?
no, I am not.
You're
I
not.
don't even I do not live in the US either. So
Okay. I mean, that part is fine, but I mean, we try to keep this for Christians because
for sure.
you know, if
No,
you
and
are,
I get
but go ahead.
that.
Yeah.
Well, so it's less of a debate thing for me, and it's
Mhm.
more of in your tagline, you say being black and being Christian are incongruent.
Correct.
Now, in as a non-Christian
Mhm.
outside of the US, I am curious of what that means.
Mm.
Like, what does it, and basically that boils down to like, what does it mean to be black? And what
Mm.
does it mean to be Christian? Because
Yeah.
obviously I'm not black and I'm
Mhm.
not Christian.
Mhm.
So in order to fully understand where your video is going, it
Yes.
would help to know, what does it mean to be black?
Mhm.
Let's start there. What
That
does
is,
it mean
first
to
of
be
all, let
black?
me just say that the majority of people that come up here don't even ask that question. So I appreciate the question because you have to start there. So being black is not a pigment. It is a class. It is a political ideology. It is a state of oppression, perpetual oppression. And it's a social, well, I already said that, social class, a political ideology, um and a state of oppression. I think that's kind of that's a pretty broad way to say it. And being a Christian is when you accept Christ as your Lord and Savior. You accept him, you repent from your sins, you accept Christ as your Lord and Savior, and as that work on the cross, it becomes you can live your life. Christ comes to live in your heart. The Holy Spirit lives in you, and it gives you power in the earth right now. Now, it's not the full power of God because we are still on this side of heaven, but you are able to communicate with God. He communicates with you. There is you are reconnected, reconciled with the Father who created you.
Gotcha. Okay. And that actually helps because some people are like, where am I from? I sound Canadian. No, I am not Canadian. I actually was born in Minnesota. My father, however, I'm a dual citizen of England and America. Currently, I live in Mongolia, so it is 8:59 in the morning here right
Oh, okay.
now.
Top of the morning to you.
Thank you. But yeah, and so because I lived in Minneapolis, Minnesota, um, I've heard very different things on what it means to be black because it has to do, at least with what I've heard,
Mhm.
it's a skin color, but it's also a culture. And that was what I was trying to pin down is like, when one calls himself black, are they saying that they are of a different culture? If so, then that would make sense because not all cultures are compatible with Christianity. Our culture here in Mongolia is not compatible with Christianity at
How
all.
so?
So Mongolia is predominantly Tibetan Buddhist. There's also Mongolian shamanism here.
Mhm.
Christianity is labeled by the government as Christianity, Catholicism, JWs, Mormons. All of that is less than 3% of the total population, right? So in Asia, Christianity is a very, very fringe minority.
Mhm.
And that's what I was actually going to agree with you on is, someone said that Christianity is the number one religion ever.
Mhm.
Not here. If
Mm.
you are a Christian, and you were born in a Mongolian household. My wife is Mongolian. She hates Christians with a passion.
Oh,
Her mother hates Christians with a passion. Most people
why is
do
that?
because of the culture. The culture is based around Bogd Khan, Chinggis Khan, Genghis Khan, and Mongolian history. And if you give up your history for a foreign religion, you are no longer seen as Mongolian. So what I was trying to ascertain is being black, like the culture behind it, different than being a Christian, like the Christian culture or the Christian lifestyle.
I would say it has become that way. So, in America, blacks did not regard themselves so heavily, it wasn't so racialized. That really came about in the 60s, where, the Civil Rights Act and all of the Civil Rights Movement and all that, and this black power thing that grew out of the Civil Rights Movement. So before that, like this paper that I just showed, this was written in 1966, and they called themselves Negro churchmen. So there wasn't black, it wasn't African American, it was Negro churchmen, because the race thing was not a big thing for them, and blacks were much more successful. The neighborhoods were safer. They were flourishing. The illiteracy rates were going down. Like, they were thriving in so many ways. Was it perfect? No, but they were certainly coming out of the past, all those things. After the Civil Rights Act, it flipped on its head, and so that's when so the Civil Rights Movement started this trend of blacks begging the government and just basically like trying to turn black community into a nanny state. And out of that came the Black Power movement, which was the militant, Black Panthers, all that. And so when you get those two things together, and you got this begging the government for everything, and then on top of that, this militant, aggressive, it's your thing, do what you want to do, no morals, that whole thing. Well, now we see the outworking of that. Just look at all the black communities, and people will say like, oh, well, that's because of slavery. But if you look before the Civil Rights Movement, black communities did not look like this. So it's not inherently the culture. That's the thing. It is a learned culture, and an accepted culture that that American blacks have taken on, in my opinion.
Gotcha. Okay, so that and I mean, obviously, I assume you're not speaking for all black people across America. So it's, I like to float around panels. Tam knows me from
Okay.
Tam knows me from a righteous perspective and other things.
Okay, cool.
So yeah, and I just wanted to kind of dive in on that to answer one of the questions in the comments, or a couple things by Katie. Are Christians persecuted there? Not actively. They are shunned, right? So here in Mongolia, we have like more really, and I say we because I'm going for citizenship. I have my residency, I'm going for citizenship, right? So I say we, like, as a whole, just from a semantics point of view. People who, like, if you're a foreigner, like when I first was talking with my wife and going through the marriage process, her family just assumed I was a Christian because, I mean, I'm white and from America, right? But people who are Mongolian, from what my wife tells me and from what her family and others tell me, is they're not actively persecuted, but when they convert, people just avoid them. Right, people just don't want anything to do with them anymore because it's like, oh, you're turning away from our glorious heritage, kind of a thing, right? And I can
that's not to cut you off, but that's one of the things with Christianity. It is very solid. Culture changes, but if you build your identity in your culture, when it shifts and it changes, let's say it's changing to something that's not good, but you're still holding on to it. Like, you're holding on to something that is not even good for you, but you don't want to let it go. And that is very much what has happened in with many American blacks. Like, they have held on to this thing despite what the product is of this culture, single mom headed homes, the crime, the poverty, just the all of the ghettoification, all of it. Just even though most blacks don't live like that, they're silent or they uplift it. So even
Yeah.
it's
And
dangerous.
I mean, I get that. When
More
and
right
like
than it
Katie, yeah, Katie's bringing up that hate is a strong word and shunning is a cult tactic.
Mm,
I mean, you have to keep in mind that different cultures have a different worldview. I am Hindu. My father is British Indian. That's how I have dual citizenship.
mm-hmm,
His side of the family is Hindu, right? So this is a practice that has been going on globally to where just people don't want anything to do with you. And
mm-hmm,
it's not just Christians either, right? There are Mongolians who go overseas to America. Some people will not interact with them,
mm,
and because of that's the way things are. Culture here in the east and like in India and like many parts of the world, it doesn't shift as much as America.
mm-hmm,
And I think it's because, and I could be wrong, but just my experience having lived in America is that America is so diversified, right? That it has different cultures. It has the concept of freedom of speech and freedom of religion.
mm-hmm.
It exists here to a point, but I mean, in America, you look at the population and it's like 50% white approximately, and then you
Mm-hmm.
have a bunch of other people groups in there.
Mm-hmm.
In Mongolia, it's 99.99% Mongolian.
Right.
Right. So there's going to be a fundamental difference when it
Right.
just
Yeah.
comes to word. And it's the same with countries like China and
Mm-hmm.
India and
Where they are
Africa.
homogenous. They are, what
Yeah.
do you call it? Homogenous.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a correct term, yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, homogenous, and the same thing can be said with Caucasian countries like Finland and
Mm-hmm.
Sweden, right? Even people go there from America who are Caucasian, they go
Mm-hmm.
to those countries and they have a hard time and they don't understand why. Well, it's because
Yeah.
it's like, well, it's a different culture and
It's a
almost
different culture.
literally everyone is the same.
Yeah. And
So,
see, with the Christian faith, it has its own culture.
exactly.
We have a culture that we live by, that we are to love our enemy. We have a culture
Mhm.
that we live by, that we are to, treat people with dignity and respect. We have a culture that we live by that tries to uplift people, that tries to, like, something in our in the Christian faith that I love, that if somebody is in need but they are not saved, let's say,
Mhm.
the Bible tells us that we first take care of the person,
Right.
and not try to say, oh, I can't help you because you're not a Christian yet. Like, I think it is literally, how it's one of the things that America has embedded in our culture, that some of these things that come from the Christian faiths that I
Well,
absolutely I think
that's literally the parable of the good Samaritan right there.
exactly.
Um, no, yeah, and this, like I said, this is an interesting discussion.
Mm.
Can
Let me
one be
ask
like,
you a question.
go for it?
So, what does the Hindu religion faith say about the problem of evil? How is it? How does that
That
solve?
depends. So that depends on the denomination or like the sect, right? I use the term denomination just so Christians can get it because
Mhm.
Hinduism and Christianity is very different. It's not a one for one the starting place. So when it comes to evil, um, I would argue there's some denominations, if you will, don't have that concept. There is duty and obligation, which is called dharma, right? What you should do. And there's different kinds of dharma. So, for instance, I am a married man. I have a duty to my wife.
Mhm.
I have a duty to the family,
Mhm.
right? And then there is adharma, which is abandoning that duty, or what Christians could call sin. But
Okay.
when it comes to evil,
Mhm.
that's not a universal concept in Hinduism.
So, what would, like, murder be considered?
It
What is
would,
how
I
does
mean, so honor killing is a thing in Hinduism, and it's pretty common in India as well as in America, right? And people hear about, like, for
Common in
instance,
America? Common?
I said common in India.
Oh, okay. I was it. Okay,
Yeah, it
sorry.
happens in America, but it's kind of rare in
Yeah,
America.
I would
But
say
yeah,
that.
but in India it's pretty common, right? And you hear
Yeah.
about it because a man kills a woman.
Mhm.
But when it comes to murder,
Mhm.
right? I would argue, and this is just my religious belief, but, like, for instance, when a child is abused, that child has been dishonored, that child has engaged in horrific things,
Mhm.
the abuser must be killed.
Yes, Christianity doesn't function that way.
Yeah, there's a fundamental difference, but, like, when it comes to, like, the
We believe
Christian
he should be
definition of
punished.
murder,
Like, and if the death
no.
penalty, like if the crime is heinous enough, death penalty might apply. But just out the gate, yeah, because we believe in forgiveness.
Yeah, and that's one of the core fundamental differences, and I would say that, I would have a passing familiarity with Christianity, right? So
Mhm.
it's a fundamentally different worldview, and from the Christian perspective, it would be what you would consider works based. It's not. It's not a free gift. It is works based
Gotcha.
because it's
You
all
don't
centered
find
around
that
dharma and
kind of
duty.
not secure? Like, how do you feel secure? How do you know, I guess, when you've done enough work to obtain what nirvana, I think?
Nirvana. Well, so yeah, nirvana moksha, the liberation of that.
Mhm.
By achieving it, right?
You know by
And it,
achieving.
and it really boils down to, I think, regardless of what religion are like one is, we know what we as individuals should be doing personally, right? Like,
Well,
you know
yeah,
what you should
we
be
know it is
doing,
good.
I know what I should be doing according to our faith, right?
But from the
So
Christian
it's
perspective, it's like
Mhm.
our God is a holy God. There is no there is nothing unholy with him. So he doesn't accept uh anything less than holiness. And so that's why
Mhm.
for us, that's why we needed a savior, because we could not work ourselves to his perfection. And so he sent his son himself.
Mhm.
He sent his son to save us from our sins. You know this. You know how it goes.
Mhm. Yeah.
So like from my perspective, I'm like, I might know what's right and wrong, but I know I'm not perfect. So I guess it's like, is your God?
It's not a matter of perfection, it's a state of being, and this is why Hinduism and Christianity can't be compared for a one-to-one, and, like, I've talked a bit about, this, which is kind of an interesting deviation, but I suppose it does go in line with the topic of, like, unapologetically Black and Christian, and there are
Culture part for sure. Yeah.
the culture part, and this
Mhm.
is where, like, I could even bring up to kinda, like, tie it to the topic when it comes to culture.
Mhm.
Like, there are Christians or people who claim to be Christians, I'll put it that way,
Mhm.
who adopt Hindu practices like yoga.
Yeah,
In my opinion, as a Hindu, you cannot be a Christian and practice yoga.
I
And
agree.
I say this because as a Hindu, the asanas, which is Sanskrit for basically the poses, right?
Mhm.
It's not a stretch. It's not a means of exercise. We do this because we literally believe we embody the deva inside ourselves. It's a means of communing with the deva in what's
What is that?
called,
What is a deva?
so basically a god, right? It's an incarnation of God, a physical incarnation of God,
Mhm.
right? So, to stay on the topic of the culture,
Mhm.
Christians adopt other cultures that do not fit with Christianity because when we do the poses, when we do yoga, we are engaged in what's called pranayama or deep meditation, deep prayer.
Mm.
We are allowing this to come inside ourselves.
Wow.
And I'm not an expert on Christianity, but I do know that Christianity does forbid the cultural, like, or adopting the culture of what are considered pagan practices, and this goes back to the Old Testament, where Jehovah commands the extermination of the was it the Assyrians,
Mhm.
and there was the Philistines, and then there was one other group that liberal Americans like to use, but basically Israel was commanded to wipe out every man, woman, and child because of how evil they were. So what we're talking about when it comes to like Christian culture and other cultures, historically, if you look at the Bible, there is a historical precedent all the way down.
Yeah, we definitely would not engage in that type of behavior, because we that would be idolatry. I mean that would be even be getting into like full on possession, like when you are inviting a entity that is not the Holy Spirit into, you know. And I would just say for you, Diamond Dave, I would really be careful with that because you.
I'm aware. I mean I've heard all sides. I've heard all sides. So and at the end of the day, people make their decisions.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned idolatry, and this is something I've been watching with the Carmelo Anthony case, right? With like black culture. And I
Mm-hmm.
can't help but wonder if there's idolatry there because when we talk about Christians and yoga, guys, I'm a Hindu. We literally call the statues we worship idols.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Google it. I'm not making this up, right? We have like I posted this on Facebook, right? But we like my family because my wife is Tibetan Buddhist and her family's Tibetan Buddhist. We literally have an entire room full of idols. That is what they are called
Yeah.
in Hinduism as well as Buddhism.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something that at least even though we have different theologies, we can agree on. And when it comes to the Carmelo Anthony case, I'm not black.
Right.
But it seems like there are some people who put their melanin production, their
Mm-hmm.
skin color, like above what should be reserved, in my opinion, for deity. I could be wrong.
Yes, I mean that's exactly why we, and when I say we, I mean those of us who agree with me, why we have a problem with it. I'm going to bring up my good friend Chuck Littleton here to join in the discussion, but that is exactly why we disagree with, you know, being black and Christian. But what was I missed the part you said when you said Carmelo Anthony, and what was
Yeah.
behind the
So,
statue part?
so
What was?
well, there's so what I've been seeing of the Carmelo Anthony case is
Mhm.
people are saying black people can't claim self-defense in America, and then it goes down to from that precedent, black people cannot claim self-defense in America. From what I have seen anecdotally, it then turns to racism is alive and well into America, to black people were here before America, and then it turns into more of like this is our true traditions and what we as black people should be doing.
Mm.
Right.
Mhm.
Now, obviously, I'm not black. I'm not an expert on this. It's just something I've observed, and that's why I called in to like be educated. And if chat wants to yell at me, go right ahead because I want to learn. So,
No, it's all good. I mean, I'm cool with you asking questions. I am concerned about your soul though, but but
you were the first one. I literally have thousands of people across the world praying for me right now.
well,
So,
good,
that's good.
because we're gonna definitely add you to our prayer list here at my house too. But go ahead, Chuck. What do you have for us?
Uh,
Welcome.
how you doing? No, I was just listening and I missed a huge chunk of the conversation. So maybe it's best if I just step off and let you guys have it. I was debating on whether to even come up until Dave came up and he asked a question about being black and that whole thing. What does it mean? Where did it all come from?
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, I think I think I'll come up and give a take a stab at it.
Yeah,
Plus,
for sure.
Dave is a new face, but I stepped away for a second, and then when I came back, you guys were talking about something about the Bible and the Israelites or something like that.
Oh, Hindu. So Dave is
Hinduism,
Hindu,
yeah,
and we were talking about that with the
yeah,
culture. So the culture is not compatible with Christian the Hindu culture, Mongolian culture is not compatible with Christianity, much like how, Black culture is not compatible with Christianity. So that's kind of like how we
okay.
went down there.
Yeah, so I kind of missed that. I will say, it sounds like they're at the tail end. Dave was talking. I don't know, Dave. Judging by, your accent, have you ever lived here in the United States for any amount of time?
Yeah, I actually mentioned I was born in Minnesota, right?
Minnesota.
So yeah, I was born in Minnesota. I'm a dual citizen of England. I only spent like a few years in England, a few years in India, but predominantly my life has been in the U.S. And the reason why I'm in Mongolia is because I met my wife. Otherwise, I would have moved back to India just because there's obviously a very different cultural and worldview difference that
Right.
I connect with India a lot more.
And
So
Chuck, for some reason, we can't hear you
Can't hear
much.
you
I
again.
don't know.
It was
So yeah,
good
if you can lean
yesterday.
in,
All right, it was good yesterday, and it
it was good.
got bad again. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I only asked because you were talking about the Carmelo Anthony situation, and I guess this is some of the things you have been hearing from I guess the folks who seem to yell the loudest about blacks in the United States, and
mhm.
that blacks can't I guess mount a self defense or claim self defense as a defense in legal matters. And I would just say, as rule of thumb, whenever you hear a black activist online or on TV or somewhere saying something, yelling, screaming, trying to make their case about how blacks are treated unfairly in the United States, rule of thumb, don't believe them. They're lying. That's just the
Mm.
cardinal rule 101. Take your time, do your due diligence, look into it. 9 times out of 10, they are lying through. I mean, just flat out, just through their teeth. They're just lying. So that's rule of
I
thumb.
take everything with a grain of salt. That's why I initially called in, because my initial question was, what does it mean to be
Yeah,
black?
black.
Because
Yeah.
different people, some of
Mhm.
it's a culture, some of it's a
Well,
tradition, some of it's a heritage, some of
yeah.
it's a, just skin color. So
Yeah. Nah, but like I said, yeah, they're just trying to get over. They're trying to get over. I mean, and this is, I mean, I'm probably not telling you something that you don't already know. I did hear when you said you live in Mongolia. That's why I asked if you have any, roots, anything like that here. To I guess, maybe you would be familiar with what I'm talking about when it comes to political demagoguery and a lot of charlatans would think that you claim to represent the interests of blacks en masse. But yeah, they're just trying to get over. It's not real. It's not true at all. But Keisha, would you mind if I took a stab at sort of answering this question about the roots of black, the black identity, black culture? You muted.
Go for it.
Okay, yeah. Like I said, I didn't know if you wanted me to backtrack because I don't know if you were past that. But yeah, to Dave's inquiry there about it, it really has its roots in Pan Africanism. I don't know if you have heard that term,
So
heard that.
I'm somewhat familiar with it, where people in America, some black people, trace their roots back to Africa. They want to go back to Africa, or they tie their heritage to
Mhm.
Africa.
Yeah, it's kind of it's I guess I don't even know where exactly to start to explain it, because Pan Africanism is really just an intellectual or political abstraction. If you take the prefix pan, it simply means all
Across.
or entire, right? All. And
Mhm.
so there was this idea that became very, I guess, avant-garde amongst many black activists in the late 1800s, early 1900s, that seeing is how these various European nation states and their expansive empires uh, had a similar effect on non-whites the world over. Those individuals, non-whites that is, have a sort of mutual heritage that is
Mhm.
rooted, okay, in oppression and dominance by European colonial powers, and it is for that reason that those individuals must unite politically and economically, et cetera, so that they can, get out from underneath this kind of, Euro centric colonial, domination. And so it presupposes this, right? And it tries to, it merely renders all other lines of demarcation that separate people of color the world over. It simply seeks to render those lines trivial for the purpose of this newly found, newly created cause of liberation, I guess, during the first wave of this sort of anti-colonial fervor that began to, I guess, take over the world, or sweep the world by the late 1800s, which is what eventually led to the second wave of colonization when, many of these European nation states went into parts of Asia and
That's
Africa.
part of why I exist in the first place, because it was my grandfather on my father's side that married an Indian woman, and
Mhm.
that's how my father came to be.
Yeah,
And
yeah, my,
then my father met my American mother, who was a Christian. She was in London.
right,
They
my,
married. Here I am. So
yeah,
yeah, I'm familiar with the colonization, very, very much
right.
so. Yeah.
And so yeah, my it's funny. My grandfather is Indian, not Native American Indian, but East Indian. But no,
What part? Out of curiosity.
I don't know. My grandfather, he was the kind of guy. He was one of those old school guys, man. Didn't really show a lot. I mean, you didn't really know much about his background. Didn't really like to talk about his interesting.
Very humble and
Yeah, yeah,
coy.
he's
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
he's East
yeah.
Indian genetically, but oddly enough, he was born and raised in Jamaica, and so you can imagine a guy. He looks Indian, but he has he has very thick Jamaican accents. Which it's kind of like a shock to the senses growing up and being around him. But I mean, I didn't really know much about his past life and his upbringing and stuff like that, because he was a very kind of honorary kind of man. You didn't really get too close to him. You kind of stayed out my grandfather's way, because that's just the kind of person that he was. But
If I just may really quick,
mm,
that's be that's one of the reasons why you can't just see black skin and then automatically think that they are suffering from some kind of like oppression, or they just automatically come with this bag that you want to give them of all of this stuff, because you don't know the history of that person. So like looking at you would never know that. You would never know.
right, right, right. So and like I say, to get back, if I may, to the Pan Africanism, you had two competing individuals in the early 1900s in the United States that were sort of like vying for control over who would be the spokesperson for this newly evolving movement. And for as much as we hear about this so-called rivalry between Booker T. Washington and W.E.B. Du Bois, the rivalry really existed between W.E.B. Du Bois and Marcus Garvey. There was correspondence between Garvey and Booker T prior to Garvey arriving in the States in 1916. When Garvey came to the States in 1916, of course, Booker T. Washington had died a year prior in 1915. And it was Garvey and his United Negro Improvement Association that was carrying the standard for Pan-Africanism from his point of view, particularly given the fact that the red, black, and green flag, which came to symbolize Pan-Africanism, was, so the history goes, a creation of Marcus Garvey himself. And I think it was introduced at one of their conferences, and I think the year was 1918, if I'm not mistaken. But to some, Du Bois himself had a claim to the title as the original or originator of this political slash intellectual concept, because Du Bois was the keynote speaker at the first ever Pan-African Congress conference that took place in the year 1900 in London, England, of all places, not Africa. But the first Pan-African Congress was actually in England in the year 1900. But even Keisha, prior to that, uh, these ideas that blacks had to somehow separate themselves from whites while also embracing a new sort of spirituality was put out by William Edward Blyden, and America's quote unquote first black Hebrew Israelite, a man named William Crowdy. These were like your first Pan-Africanists, even going back before Du Bois, Edward Wilmot Blyden and William Crowdy. All right. So you have to kind of start there and go from there. And then, so once Marcus Garvey, and I'll try to wrap this up and I'll let you guys have it. Garvey, his organization became so influential and so powerful, okay, that now here's it's an interesting thing, Keisha, because here's where the Communist Party comes in. Because the Communist Party and Garvey was intertwined, and he commingled with communists quite frequently. But what you'll hear when you look at the historical record, the way it reads traditionally, is that Garvey was against communism. It wasn't so much that he was anti-communist, but it was simply that he was somewhat apprehensive toward them because he viewed them as a threat to his organization, a threat to his own power within his own organization. But he loved Trotsky. He was very fond of Vladimir Lenin, all of these individuals. Why? Because Lenin and his Bolsheviks were regarded by Garvey and others like him. Lenin and his Bolsheviks were regarded as the so-called vanguard whose revolutionary tactics and attitudes and strategies, etc., were the key toward overcoming the ill effects of colonialism and imperialism, because that is how Lenin and his and his Bolsheviks, that is how they framed themselves. That's how they fashioned themselves. So the idea became, okay, well, how do we move in and get a hold of Garvey's organization? The first so-called the first black member in the States to join the Communist Party was a man by the name of Otto Hauswald. Otto Hauswald introduced to the Comintern during the Fourth Congress of the Communist International, he informed them that black participation is going to be pivotal to the success of the communist movement. And this set in motion the idea on behalf of the delegates there to try and, of course, create this parallel state in the American South that they referred to as the Black Belt. Now, this was kind of like the first iteration of anything tantamount to what we would today refer to as Black nationalism. But again, this was all a communist plot, because Garvey, seeing as how he was sort of like the godfather of Black nationalism, right? Communists said, well, we can try and establish this kind of linkage with Garvey to grab hold of his power so that the United Negro Improvement Association could work on behalf of the Communist Party. And of course, they had this kind of exclusive Black Communist Party based in the Caribbean that was led by a man named Cyril Briggs. He was the head of something called the African Blood Brotherhood. This was an offshoot of the Communist Party in the Caribbean. And Cyril Briggs and Garvey would have these knockdown, drag out back and forth with one another in the public eye as well. And so again, it's pretty much like a trickle down from there. It's a lot of history, and I'm trying to run through it as quickly as I can, and make it as concise as I can.
Mhm.
But from Garvey to the organizations like the Moorish Science Temple, and then the Nation of Islam, and then from there we get Black liberation theology within the Christian church, and then Malcolm X, who picks up on Garvey because Malcolm X's father was once a member of the United Negro Improvement Association. Malcolm X, once Du Bois is out of the picture, he's no longer the premier leader of the Black community. Once Du Bois is out of the picture, he's old and washed up and passe. Malcolm X becomes the new figurehead of Black nationalism by the 1960s. And it is the spirit of Malcolm X that really by the late 60s, when you kind of had the secularization of these ideas, it's no
Mhm.
longer uniquely Islamic or Black Hebrew Israelite, etc. It's merely just outright, just kind of like I said, secular.
Mhm.
This is when you get the whole Black Power type thing going on by the late 1960s, and they were taking a lot of their inspiration from Malcolm X, who by then was the figurative leader, or he's the one by that time who was carrying the standard of what Garvey had did several decades before himself.
You know, and the more I read all this stuff, you start to see where they're like, enough with that Martin stuff.
Mhm.
Let's talk about Malcolm. Let's pick up some more of Malcolm's tactics. Let's, really embracing the Panthers, the more militant, more aggressive, all that thing. It's like I read paper after paper. At some point, they literally are like, yeah, we're done with the whole Malcolm thing or the whole Martin thing.
And
Um,
so, right, and so the reason Keisha is saying that questioning this idea of blackness and saying that blackness and Christianity are antithetical, because blackness, once black became the more commonly used refrain to describe people of color, quote unquote, in the United States, this is when they began to openly embrace. This is when blacks, or at least the organizations that claim to represent them, became a constituent, a sector or a wing of what by then became what was then now called the quote unquote new left. Okay, and the new left, of course, with communism, with Marxism, and with its roots in atheism, this is what calls into question this whole notion of being pro-black and being Christian at the same time, because to be pro-black is to be, whether unwittingly or not, of course, is to be openly Marxist, because the people to whom popularize these trends, like Stokely Carmichael and others, these men were doctrinaire Marxists, and they made no apologies about it. And that's what Black Power was about. It was about seizing power by way of Marxism Leninism. And this is what Stokely Carmichael said again, and he made no apologies about it.
Very true. Yeah. All right. So, Chuck, are you staying? You leaving? What you doing?
Uh, I don't know. I guess I hang around for a little bit, man. I might dip out in a little bit. I
O-
hang out for a little bit. I know I
Okay.
know I
Well,
know I just
I
said a
can't
whole
say
lot.
I'm too familiar with all of the names that you've mentioned, but I don't know. It does fit the like the playbook, at least in my anecdotal experience of how China, the CCP, operates. So it does fit. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, my wife has family in China, so that doesn't come as a shock to me that if this is true, and this is the first time I've heard a lot of this, but if this is true, that's not all that different from how the Communist Party of China operates.
Yeah.
They have
This is
literally
well,
used this playbook all over it's the same playbook that they go, like every country that they've tried to overtake.
well,
This is like
actually,
what they
so it's
do.
actually well, actually, it's the same playbook for the U.S. and Western nations specifically, but in other countries, it's actually fundamentally different because if you look at how, like, what Chuck was talking about with the like Marxism and the concept of blackness in America, right? What communists are doing in China, they're just buying up the seaports all along Africa. They just spend a bunch of money. Like China owns most of the ports along the eastern coast of Africa, if not all of them by now. They are heavily invested in the mining operations in I believe it's Congo, Burkina, well, not Burkina Faso anymore because of Ibrahim Traore. I can't pronounce his last name, but Ibrahim Traore, he's kicking out all Westerners and just everybody. But like China goes in with a bunch of money and is just like spending it left and right. But with like
That's a
America and
more
the US,
that's sort of, if my memory serves me correctly, and I'm going through perimenopause, so it might not be, but that's relatively new. Their kind of venture into capitalism and all that, but before they were, kind of like the Mao and just communist in Europe. Well, I guess that would be the West, I guess.
yeah, that's
But
the West.
in other, like when you um China, and where are some of the other places that I've seen them
Are you
do
referring to communist nations? There's Vietnam, there's
Vietnam?
Myanmar. Myanmar's a big
Here's what I'm
one.
basically trying to say. They it was never race in other places before, when they were doing it in other places, they were doing it on class mostly, not so much culturally until like Mao, I believe. But the tactics, I mean, are the same, like agitating the margins, creating chaos, pitting groups against each other to make it seem like, dishing out propaganda. There's certain tactics that they have, that they do, and that they've done in pretty much every country. I don't really see them deviating much from their tactics.
No.
Yeah, I mean they will. I mean, you are right in that it's more modern. Like when it comes to like Mao Zedong, like within the past 50 to 70 years,
Mhm.
historically, if you look at like the Chinese dynasties, it's relatively the same. Um, but yeah, and I mean what the playbook is, and it's not just communism, but it's just like anyone seeking world power is they're going to look at a nation and its problems. And America, it just happens to be race, is one of the most talked about problems. And of course, where there's division, if you can fuel that fire, you can separate people, you can isolate people, you can get them on your side. And so that's probably why, in my opinion, a lot of countries are like using race against America specifically, just because it's a hot button topic. In England, it's the monarchy, right? It's the monarchy because that's very much a hot button topic, both with the Epstein files, but also just with classism, right? You have people paying tax dollars to the crown, but what is the crown actually doing? They're figureheads. They don't actually have real political power over the common everyday people's lives, right? So that's going to be a hot button issue. And then in other countries, finances are going to be an issue. So people will prey on that.
I guess I would say for America, it's unique because we don't have permanent classes. You can be born rich
True.
and die poor, or be born poor and die rich. And so it's like you can't really do the typical economic Marxism, communist here. So what's the next best thing? With the rollout of the cultural Marxism, it's like, okay, well, you got this history here with slavery and all of this stuff, and there's a physical difference, and all of that, and it's like it was like the perfect storm kind of for these cultural Marxists to glom onto.
Well, and to Chuck's point, that actually makes a fair amount of sense too, because like blackness, like I've heard the term blackness and whiteness,
Mm-hmm.
but whiteness is very confusing to me as a white person because European countries are fundamentally different. Like I have British and some Scandinavian ancestry. That is different than Ireland. That is different than Belgium. That is different than Italy. And none of us want to be associated with the French because
Right.
fuck the French. We hate those people.
Exactly.
Right. So it's like, what does it even mean? Like, I like blackness. I don't understand because I'm not black, obviously, and I'm not familiar with that concept. Whiteness, I don't understand because, well, you go to Europe and you can literally drive across 6 different countries in a day.
Mm-hmm.
And the culture and languages, even in the European Union, you can go through 6 different countries in one day in one shot. Even though there's the same currency, there's different languages, there's
Mm-hmm.
different dialects, there's different cultures, there's different traditions, there's different interpretations of the same religion, like Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
German Christianity is different than French Christianity, which is different than Irish Catholicism. Granted, you can drive there, but you get the point.
Mm-hmm.
So it personally never made sense to me when people brought up whiteness in contrast to blackness, because I'm like, which culture are we talking about here? Because I don't even get Finland whatsoever.
So
So
whiteness is it's a social construct also. I mean, it's one of these Marxist constructs, and it is a way that it's a way that they define what they call the norm. It's the normative way of being, and so they say that America is intrinsically racist. So because we have a past of slavery, they totally disregard the world's history of slavery, but we're going to zero in on these white people who, and not all white people had slaves, obviously, and just a very small amount of white people had slaves. And so they take this that history and retell it in this way that says, because that history exists, therefore, if you're white, you set the rules, you set the standard, regardless of if the standard is, if the ideas were good and righteous and something to work towards. That doesn't matter. It was started by white people, and therefore it's the norm, and and because it's white, it's bad. So norm can't be good.
well, someone in the comments, Candy Raton says whiteness is code for capitalism and fascist,
Kind of,
which
yeah, they
Okay.
throw it all
which is kind of interesting because I live in a country that you could argue is fascist. So does that mean Mongolians are white? Be very careful if you come here and answer that question, just as a heads up.
They
Right,
would
just as
never
a
say
heads
that
up.
there.
Well, yeah, well, no, and I'm not trying to bash on Candy, but I'm just speaking in general, right? Because like
No.
people like to throw around
Can I-
words like blackness, whiteness, fascism, and that's why I want to like get clear so we can have this discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
if you talk about, say, fascism, there are many countries that are considered fascist or along those lines where there's a great sense of national pride. Banks are nationalized by the government, and everything is based around funding the government's military or cultural traditions, right? That's one part of fascism,
Mm-hmm.
and that case can be made for a lot of countries globally,
Yeah.
right?
This goes back to the top of the show, Keisha. There's something else I wanted to mention, but I guess now is sort of not the right time because we're not there at the moment. But when you were playing the clip from the pastor who was speaking, and he had used the term Christian nationalism. I say, see, there they go again, using that term, because what they're
Yeah.
trying to elicit in you is ideas of the kind of marshaling of society from a central vantage point which is a key ingredient to the fascistic societal model. This kind of extreme militarism that came to define German society, beginning with the days or during the time of Otto von Bismarck. But again, we'll talk about that, because remember I said that this whole Christian nationalism or white nationalism thing, it's used as conjecture, is used
Yes.
to play on people who don't have a decent understanding of political science, political theory. They don't have a decent understanding of history. And so it frightens people, it scares people, it terrifies people, because you start conjuring up ideas of, notice how they're so keen on referring to, people like Trump as a fascist, or,
Hmm.
referring to him, as being Hitlerian, or, certain political figures in other predominantly white countries, like, Viktor Orban. I mean, you can just go on down the line. Taya Maloney. I mean, she could be a female Hitler. I mean, it doesn't matter. If they're white and they're whatever. Anyway, so we're part of the conversation, but I just want to just harp on this real quick, and then maybe, like I said, I want to touch on this whole nationalism thing later, because I remember a few shows ago I touched on what nationalism meant
Hmm.
politically. But I think I think it warrants even further exploration. But to answer Dave's question about what is whiteness and what does it even mean, of course, the idea and the concept of whiteness versus blackness was popularized by a critical race Marxist, an intellectual by the name of Cheryl Harris. Again, these people are charlatans. These are people who are just they come up with these fanciful philosophical ideas that have no real roots in reality, because, as you mentioned, Europe is a very diverse place, just like any other region of the world. When you go back, especially like during the times of the, let's say, like 1830, in these mass nationalist uprisings in parts of Europe, you talk about the age-old rivalry between the Dutch and the French, and the
Hmm.
different Austrians and the Hungarians, and the French and the English. I mean, Europe. If there's one thing that characterizes Europe correctly, when you look at Europe over the past 500-600 years or so, is war and conflict. So where does this idea come from that white people in general are all the same? Well, it comes from this quack by the name of Cheryl Harris, who wrote an essay titled "Whiteness as Property." It
Oh,
was
yes.
published in the late 80s, and I tried to quickly pull something up that could quickly summarize this, and I was able to find something on Harvard's Law Review: Whiteness as Property, Race and Law. This is reflections on whiteness as property by Cheryl Harris. Just real quick, it's only like 2 paragraphs. I'll try to read it quickly, and then I'll let you guys. Then I got to step off for a second. I may come back though. Cheryl Harris says issues regarding race and racial identity, as well as questions pertaining to property rights and ownership, have been prominent in much public discourse in the United States. In this article, Professor Harris contributes to this discussion by positing that racial identity and property are deeply interrelated concepts. So you see where she's going. Professor Harris examines how whiteness, initially constructed as a form of racial identity, evolved into a form of property. Whiteness is property, historically and presently acknowledged and protected in American law. So law as an institution from a orthodox Marxian perspective was created to protect the interests of the powerful. In this case, according to Professor Cheryl Harris, our legal system was created to protect the benefits of whiteness. And whiteness is what one possesses that allows them to have access to the spoils of the society. And so once whites from different parts of Europe, I know you want to chime in. I'm almost done, Dave. When white
I have a
folks
question. I have a question right off the bat
when
from
white
what you
folks
said.
come in from various parts of Europe, they are able to be absorbed into the quote unquote melting pot, and therefore all kind of ethnocentric distinct Eurocentric or ethnocentric distinctions from a European perspective, they're all done away with, because they're all consumed within the melting pot. So it says Professor Harris traces the origins of whiteness as property and the parallel systems of the domination of Black and Native American peoples, out of which were created racially contingent forms of property and property rights. Following the period of slavery and conquest, whiteness became the basis of racialized privilege, a type of status in which white identity provided the basis for allocating societal benefits, both private and public in character. These arrangements were ratified and legitimated in law as a type of status property. Even as legal segregation was overturned, whiteness as property continued to serve as a barrier to effective change, as the system of racial classification operated to protect entrenched power. Next, Professor Harris examines how the concept of whiteness as property persists in current perceptions and racial identity, in the law's misperception of group identity, and in the court's reasoning and decisions in the arena of affirmative action. Professor Harris concludes by arguing that distortions in affirmative action doctrine can only be addressed by confronting and exposing property interests in whiteness and by acknowledging the distributive justification and function of affirmative action as central to that task. So again, just a bunch of professorial gobbledygook that means absolutely nothing except more power for those seeking control of the
I
matter.
was gonna say because it did
I'm gonna let y'all
because
go. I'm gonna try to come back.
I had a question for you, Chuck.
Go ahead, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So this was going to be my question, right?
Mhm.
And I actually typed it out because I didn't know how long you were going to go for. But if whiteness is based around property rights, right, and the acquiring of wealth, why are people in the Black community who are espousing this focused on acquiring property to make Black-only communities and pursuing generational wealth?
Well, the thing
Is
Ah,
that
you
not
see the
whiteness? Am I
dilemma.
No, I legitimately don't know because like my background is in accounting and finance, right? I'm a math nerd. And so when I heard that, I'm
I
like,
am
wait a
too.
second.
Yeah.
I worked at Wells Fargo in Minneapolis, Minnesota, right?
Mhm.
And a lot of people were Black and they wanted generational wealth. They wanted to start businesses so they could pass it down to their children. But if property rights, from what this one individual are saying, assuming this is true, right? Because I
Mhm.
can't see it. But assuming this is true, and whiteness is based around property rights. How does this work?
So when you say blacks, pretty much trying to, I guess, become a part of the capitalist elites, right? It sounds to me like you're suggesting that it would kind of, if for those who believe in what this woman is saying, it sounds to me like you're calling out their hypocrisy. Is that what I'm gonna understand? Like, how does that
Well,
work?
I'm trying to figure out. Here's the thing. I'm trying to figure out what's going on because, like, it's interesting that we're on this topic now because 6 hours ago, literally not that long ago, today, right? I was up early. I was watching some guy. I forget his name, but he's a Black gentleman, and he was talking about how, um, you know, how Black people are responsible for a lot of the money moving in America, and why Black people should drain America by going back to Africa.
Africa, yeah, I saw that.
But
Wow.
but having worked in Wells Fargo and having like actually gone through Rasmussen School of Business, we
Mhm,
were taught, and I was even trained on
mhm.
how Black people have been oppressed and marginalized, and how Black people make less money than white people do. So
Wow.
here there's a complete contradiction. On the one hand, banks are telling me, and even my own college is telling me, Black people don't make as much as white people. But this gentleman is saying that Black people as a whole in America are responsible for a huge amount of funding in America, and they should take their money to Africa.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I
because
don't get it.
yeah, but
That's why I'm here to ask, because like I just don't get this.
and here's the thing, they're not going to go anywhere. They're not going to go anywhere. They just want to
Yeah,
blow the air and
unfortunately.
talk because they want to set themselves apart from the mainstream so that they don't have to assimilate, because there's some very deep psychological and cultural realities here, especially when you try to have a multi-ethnic cosmopolitan like society. uh, it's very difficult because every set group brings forth with them their own set of cultural, if you will, predispositions that are not
Mhm.
immutable. These things can change, but if you notice, certain groups who hail from certain parts of the world, they tend to bring a certain preset of a kind of human capital, a certain type of human capital with them wherever they go. You know what I mean? And this is true. For example, Germans are very keen in agriculture and science. They're great garment makers. They're great
Piano
beer
makers, I
makers,
think, right?
piano makers. Yes, they're great beer brewers, and so on and so forth. And they tend to be that way wherever they go. The same way, have a certain set of human capital that they bring with them. Jews, same thing.
I was
So
just about to say, except for the Jews are great at everything, according to
right.
the world.
So right. So
Some people
and
in
they
America.
and yeah and they as far as like minorities and how this is part of what the so back it up a bit, what the Bolsheviks did with the Jews in Russia, because really
Mhm.
the communist movement, like you talked about, Dave, in England, with their, I guess there are a lot of discontent toward the monarchy. That was the culture in Russia by the early 1900s, and even prior to the Bolshevik Revolution in the month of October of 1917, the czars themselves were uh, very anti-Jewish and anti-Semitic. So it was very easy to sort of galvanize the Russian Jews into this new movement. But anyway, that's a totally separate question, because there is a bit of a contradiction there, because many people erroneously and fallaciously believe that communism is uniquely some kind of Jewish conspiracy, and it is not. Just numerically, it's just not true. But again, that's a totally separate
Well,
conversation.
it's
But
not even numerically. I mean, it's historically because um, again, my wife has family in China. They've studied in Russia. I mean, like we still have Soviet era policies. Our prison
mm,
system in Mongolia is still technically gulags, some of them
yeah,
because they haven't been updated.
But
So, I mean, like you look at the Chinese dynasties going back,
yeah,
hundreds, if not a couple thousand years, they were the exact same way,
yeah,
right?
exact same
So
way.
it's
Yeah,
not it's
yeah.
not a Jewish thing. I mean,
No,
this
it's
is
not.
just
It's
it
not.
is
It's
what
not.
it
But
is.
I know how much of a hot button topic that is in this day and age. So I didn't even mean to go there. But you're absolutely right. I second that. But yeah, man, Dave, these people, this wealth, this stuff that they're talking about taking back to Africa, what he's doing is he's just simply trying to elicit anger, frustration, and discontent. Most people, regardless if they have the means to relocate to Africa, there is, we as so-called black people here in the United States, I don't want to move to Africa. I wouldn't know what country to go to. I don't have any kind of linkage whatsoever to any part of Africa. My roots, my heritage, it all begins here with Thomas Jefferson and the Bill of Rights and Patrick Henry and George Washington and all. This is me. This is my history,
Mhm.
and I'm very proud of that. And I'm a very proud American.
Mm.
Now, regardless if these people have the means to relocate or not, many do, and those many don't, and even those who do, they won't. But they will simply sit here and complain because they aren't treated as though they, not so much they aren't treated as though they are equal citizens. The United States, and and you formerly worked for Wells Fargo. I currently work for a very large financial institution that I won't disclose because I'm currently still employed there,
Mhm.
and I want to disassociate my personal views from that of my employer. But this country has bent over backwards for these whining, complaining, panhandling Negroes, have bent over backwards for them. And it is to the extent that they don't get the things that they feel as though they deserve, not the things that they've earned, but it is to the extent that they don't get the things that they deserve. They only have themselves to blame because they impose their own marginalization upon. It's a self-imposed marginalization, and it's something that they take great pride in because they would much rather be, pro-Africa or this or that, and they would much rather be that because I think on the one hand there's this deep-seated existential fear psychologically of assimilation, but also it is easy to disenfranchise a minority population and turn that minority population against the wider society, particularly if you're one who specializes in the soft sciences and have gone through higher education. And
I
it's
was kind of
almost
wondering about that too, because it's like I saw that clip and I watched the full video, and he's encouraging, black people to get their visas in Ghana, and I'm sitting here and I'm going, okay, I literally got a visa, like 90 days visa free, and then we got married obviously before then, so I'm on a marriage visa. It's called an F1 visa. Visas expire, right? So I'm thinking more logistically. It's like I'm a dude, right? Like I'm single, it's just me, my stuff, and like throw it on, get on a plane, and even that whole process is like kind of arduous and involves money and time, right? And I'm thinking to myself, okay, so let's say these people get a visa and they go to Ghana, let's just say. Well, they have families, they have kids. They're piling two, three, four people into a plane. They're going to Ghana on a visa that can expire, right? Like, what's the long-term goal of doing this? And more importantly, like, I spent a lot of my life in the U.S., some of it outside of the U.S., most of it in the U.S. And I mean, I've been here, but it's like I still feel kind of isolated because I went to high school in Richfield, Minnesota. You know what I mean? So it's like a lot of people, not all, but a lot of people I know are back there or back in other states I've lived in, right? I'm the only one here. So it's like, and I'm a single dude. So it's like, what are they going to do about their kids and helping them find new friends? Or like, how are they going to find new friends? Like, how does this going to work?
They not going
they don't
nowhere.
mean
It's
it. They
just
don't mean
something
it.
to
It's
say.
yeah, it's just ridiculous. They just don't. They want to anyone within earshot of that fool's words. He just wants them to feel like they're unwanted in America, that they don't belong in America, so that they will remain
No.
here and be dysfunctional for the purpose of trying to destabilize and disable the society so that it can't function, so that they can hopefully topple it and remake the country in their own
That
image.
yeah, and I mean, I've heard that
So
angle before, and I
so
guess
this, this is why this is why
for me it's a
Marxists
little bit for me
they
it's a
they
little bit different. Go ahead.
this let me say this. This is why they support communists. They support these minority movements. This is why this is why they like I said they do this. And like that he's saying that, well, on the one hand, like you said, she's claiming that, well, there are legal barriers that prevent blacks from acquiring property because they're straddled with blackness. And then you hear this guy who's talking about all the we should he literally said, his words were, we should rob or take America's benefits, take their benefits away, right? It's like, well, benefits. Well, I thought you weren't getting things, but now you're telling me you have all these things. It is very yeah, man. It's 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 insane, bro. It's incoherent. Okay, it makes no sense. And when it comes to why blacks may, on average, not why they may not earn as much. You used
Mhm.
to work for Wells Fargo, so you're probably familiar with lending standards and how the underwriting process works.
And the
Just
Jabari
because
settlements of the
right,
subpar loans in
right,
2008. Yep.
yep, yep, and that's the reason why the subprime crisis happened, because
Mhm.
social engineers were trying to uh, create an environment that cultivated this atmosphere within the real estate market of what they refer to as quote unquote affordable housing, and it all went to hell because these people were not good applicants for
Mhm.
such credit extension again, and it all boiled down to a lot of the political rhetoric that suggested that non-whites were turned away on the basis of their skin color. And that's just not true. Even if a black person and a white person makes the same amount of money per year at their job, that does not speak to what they do with their money and how they spend it. Because
Exactly.
a white person who makes the same amount of money as a black person on average will have a higher, a wealthier asset portfolio. Therefore, they can make a larger down payment. If you're talking about a loan, particularly if you're talking about a loan on a home, a mortgage, and they on average have higher credit scores. So black people may earn as much money as whites, but they are far more irresponsible when it comes to the ways in which they spend their money. And so there are a lot of factors involved, but
Exactly.
there is
Well, I
no
mean, I'm even aware of statistics where like white people tend to look for, like statistically tend to look for international investments and things like AI in Japan and China, and there's a lot of white people investing in the rare earth
yeah.
minerals here in Mongolia. But black people typically want to keep it within their own community, and so their leverage is substantially less is another reason.
They really don't want to keep it in the community, Dave. I'm sorry. It's nothing.
Really?
They're not even getting the thing to keep. They're not doing whatever that guy was saying.
Yeah.
They're not doing that. It is American blacks have they do a lot of talking, just running their. I'm just being real. It's just talk. Like half of the stuff, I promise you, that these people are saying, they do not practice. I guarantee you. The dude probably heard this from some weird Afro black pan nationalist, and he's like, you know what? That sounds good to me. I'm gonna go say, because where's the evidence for this? Like, and I will say the other thing why blacks remain on the bottom is one factor: the family. When you have the majority of your homes headed by one person, and that person being the woman, it which is from a Christian perspective, not that she's lesser in value, but her role is different and submitted to a man, her husband, who is it's just there's an order. When you deviate from that, I don't really see in any culture where that has worked, where the woman becomes the leader and the society remains intact.
Well, it doesn't, because I mean, you can look at even like we were talking about India and China, and you could argue for Africa too. But I mean, there were matriarchal cultures in China, and guess what? The dynasties overran them militarily. Same with India, same with Africa. That's why, yeah, they still exist, but there's only like 300 of them in one spot, and everyone else is under what people call the patriarchy, right?
Exactly.
So,
And when
yeah,
you have that too, most families in America, if they have a two-parent household, they both work. So that's two incomes. So it automatically puts a family that just by having both parents in the home, it puts you in another tax bracket. Like, so you can't compare, they like to compare apples and oranges. When you compare apples to apples, like say a black mom and dad with a similar degrees and similar fields of study, and a white family, which I don't know why it's always compared to white people, because they're not even at the top of the list, but whatever. If you compare, typically apples for apples, black people tend to make more money. But there aren't enough black families together for that to, to make an impact. So
well, yeah,
that's
and
one huge.
before I get to a point I wanted to address with Chuck, to what you just said, one of the highest like people groups in America when it comes to finances is Indian people, right? It's the Indians, right? Because they're buying up gas stations, changing hotels left and right. You have the Patel family, you have the Ambani family back in India. You've got all these people, right? But yeah, so it's interesting that they
there's a
target.
lot of different groups that are not
Oh
a
yeah,
lot, but
but
there are several.
and
different
this
groups that are
ties into the point I want to make with Chuck, is what he said does make sense to me, because like I personally want to give everyone the benefit of the doubt, right? So when I see people talking about this, I want to assume the best of people and be like, all right, you're not a hypocrite, you're not a liar, you generally are following this guy because you want to do this thing, right? And so it's interesting that he said that, because it reminds me of another podcast I was on where they had on a couple black socialists and communists who said, they asked, what socialist country would you move to? And they're like, no, we don't want to move there. We want to make it happen here. And that was interesting to me because I moved to a socialist country. And as Chuck said, like, if you have the means to do it, there are logistics. But I threw my plane ticket on a credit card. Right? I threw it on a credit card. I threw my shit in the bandwagon and go. And a lot of these people I see that are doing it, sure, some of them have families, but a fair amount of them are single.
Mhm.
And it's like, if you really want socialism, Mongolia, Myanmar, China, what else? Vietnam, Malaysia, Indonesia, right? Malaysia and Indonesia, from even what I'm seeing of like the Black Hebrew Israelites, I think is what they're called. They're friendly to Black people. They're very socialist. They're more than happy to have you. And a one-way ticket is only $1,500 on a credit card, right? It's doable. And to Chuck's point, America is one of those few countries, and Keisha, you brought this up too, where it's like, America is one of the few countries on the planet where if you are born poor, you come to the US poor, you can become not even just rich, but you could become middle class and you can afford a one-way ticket on a credit card. You
Mhm.
can do these things, right? India under a caste system, good luck.
Good
You've
luck.
seen Slumdog Millionaire, and the star of Slumdog Millionaire is still a Dalit, and he's still looked down upon by every other Indian that's of a higher caste. Good
Mhm.
luck with that. But in America, it's doable, and that's what, to Chuck's point, it makes sense to me that they kind of want to topple things because of how easy it is. Like, comparatively speaking, if you want to topple a country to make it socialist, or you want to get on a plane and go to a socialist country, getting on a plane is far much easier and it's a lot more fun,
But they won't
right?
do it.
And there's no risk of prison time, right? There's no risk of prison time.
But
So
that's how you know they're full of it. That's how you know, because and that's how you know that you need to really dig into what they mean, because okay, if you want this socialist, you know, utopia, and you're not going to a place that has this already, then what exactly are you trying to do here? And I think that's what it is. Like Chuck said, they want to tear this down. They don't want to move because in order for the communist revolution to happen, the war their goal was to communize or whatever the whole world. That was the goal. It's still the goal. So they don't want to leave America because it hasn't happened here yet.
they don't want to leave America, but a lot of people that are pushing this, and this is just anecdotal, this is just what I see, and I'm just one person, so I don't know the statistics on this one. But a lot of people that are pushing socialism and communism are also very much against AI and digital ID. Well, guess what, guys? I live in a socialist country. I have a digital ID on my phone as well as a card where on my residency card, it has a QR code. The police can scan it and get my medical records. The hospitals can scan it and get my medical records and any criminal records, and the banks can scan it and see all three. Right?
I'm sorry, why are you there?
You want an honest answer? So this goes back this. So somebody asked, "What do people want?" So I mean, I'm of a fundamentally different worldview. I'm not anti-America. However, there are things in America that bother me personally. For instance, when I was growing up, I was in high school in the early 2000s. There were gay people. There were trans people. It wasn't a big deal. They weren't half naked in the streets humping each other in front of children, right? You didn't have gay pride flags on the White House, right? Um, I don't care what people do. I honestly don't, but just the way I was raised, I don't like seeing like straight couples making out in the streets. Go get a hotel room and relieve yourself, please. I don't want to see any form of PDA, right? There's also a lot of chaos in America. I was like, I moved here and I saw some dude set like a woman he didn't even know on fire at a train station. There was another dude who stabbed that Ukrainian girl,
Mhm.
right, for no reason on a train station. People are crashing out. There's school shootings statistically.
I get it.
It's 1.3 school shootings every day in America. Crime has gotten out of control. And I've seen it firsthand because, like, growing up in Minneapolis, Minnesota, I saw the Floyd riots firsthand. My branch in Camden, Northside Minneapolis, got hit by that, right? And I grew up in like growing up in Minnesota, like in the 2000s was great, but everything is like crashing out, right?
Mm.
I want to have a family,
I get it.
and I'm not a Christian. I don't hate Christians. I don't hate America. There are many good Americans. There's many good Americans in the chat, even if they don't agree with me. I think you guys are great people, even though we have a different theology. But
Mhm.
I want a safe place for my wife and family so we can have children, right? That has a tradition and a culture, right? And it's my job to assimilate because I'm here, right?
Right.
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 We don't have mass protests in the streets. We don't have burning buildings and riots every day. It is very, very calm, right? And I'm going to admit this, but I am one of those people where I am perfectly fine having a digital ID and AI cameras all over the place because here I get to walk down and walk down downtown Ulaanbaatar, see the government buildings with my wife at 3 in the morning. Never been pickpocketed, never been threatened. People don't even carry knives here. People don't carry knives to school. Violent crime happens, but it's extremely rare. It is
Mhm.
Right.
extremely rare, like in other countries. My sister-in-law lives in Singapore.
Oh, no.
Same
Oh,
thing.
no, they don't play that.
Yeah, same thing. And
Yeah, they're
here in America, or here in like Mongolia, it's very different because we don't have judges where if you abuse children or you commit a murder, they don't let you out on the street.
right.
That's right. Mhm.
So again, it's like those particular things bother me. And for me, someone who wants to have a family and who wants to raise children, America is not at this time the place that I want to be
Mm.
because I feel like my wife went to school in America for it was like 3 or 4 semesters, but like she saw all the crime and she came back,
Right.
Wow.
Let me.
right?
Right.
So that's just me. I'm not bashing America.
Oh,
America's a
yeah,
beautiful
no
No,
place.
no,
worries.
no.
So it's like I don't hate it,
No, no,
but
no. You articulated yourself beautifully, man, and I understand where you're coming from. You know, I really do. But I just
Mhm.
want to just jump in real quick so I can just leave say one more remark before I step off for a second. I gotta go talk to my wife about something. I don't know how long you guys are gonna be up, but to go back, Tisha, I mean, when you talk about the family and everything, I mean, of course, you know, whenever this pattern of familial breakdown occurs, I mean, all sorts of delinquency and all sorts of social pathology runs downstream from the breakdown of the family, irrespective of race, country, doesn't matter what it is. In 1920, the Soviet Union was the first country on record to legalize abortion, and things got so out of hand, and they were the first country to embrace sexual liberation and all these things. This is the Soviet Union in 1920. It had gotten so bad and crime became so out of control, at least past the point that they could bear, that they began issuing death sentences for juveniles because the crime was just so out of control. And of course, you know, shortly thereafter, they had to reverse course, and then they started to reverse engineer, started to run propaganda in the opposite direction, encouraging these new, you know, socialist man, these new Soviet citizens to begin to embrace family again and to embrace marriage. I mean, again, it was so, you know, liberal that you could divorce a person uh vis-a-vis a postcard. All you had to do was send them a postcard and say that I don't want to be married to you no more, and that was it. The marriage was over. And then Soviet Union had stopped doing it because even a communist society, ironically, it couldn't function. It couldn't function without the family. Even in a socialist society, they can't function without the family. But my last thing is, like, you know, when it comes to these socialist, or should I say maybe like socialistic sorts of societies, the ones that are held up particularly by the American left, as models for how we should be in the United States, they discount a lot of factors. They discount a lot of things, such as, for example, you mentioned, and so you're in Mongolia, but like Singapore and places like Malaysia. One of the things that they do not tolerate is they do not tolerate this seditious speech and language that Americans are allowed to engage in and go out and talk about assassinating Trump or doing this or whoever the president may be. They do not tolerate that at all.
No.
You cannot say those kind of things. You will be arrested, taken away, and thrown underneath the jail. They don't tolerate that. So it's a catch-22. Like Thomas Sowell says, you can't have it all, right? Life is about choices. It's about incentives and constraints, and you have to make decisions, knowledge and decisions, trade-offs. You either embrace more quote unquote freedom, liberty, and free speech, which could mean that bad actors exploit those weak spots within your society to call for revolution, or you can have a society where they don't tolerate that kind of questioning of the state or governmental authority. That's number one. And number two, socialistic societies that are the models for American leftists tend to be societies that are largely ethnically or racially homogeneous. It's not a lot of ethnic diversity, and maybe Dave can correct me on that if I'm wrong. He seems like he's traveled a lot more than I have. I'm simply a guy who's reading things and traveling with my mind as I study. But yeah, in these countries, there's not a whole you don't see masses of different ethnic groups flooding in, and because it just it naturally causes tension. This is true anytime where there's a compartmentalization of authority and people have their own little racial and ethnic enclaves and what have you. It breeds conflict. This was true all around the world during pre-colonial era. It takes one strong man with a monopoly on force that can, through imperial imposition, impose peace upon warring peoples. That's what the Europeans did to the natives and to other folks that they came into contact with. And so you may want to live in a socialist society, but with diversity and DEI being a cause célèbre of the American left, they wouldn't like it if they went to some of these other countries and seen that there's not a lot of ethnic diversity in these places.
Well, and that's something that I've noticed in my travels and just living here in Mongolia now and going for citizenship. I don't think American liberals would survive here.
I don't think they
Now,
would either.
so now,
But
now
hey,
setting setting the
before
joke of
Before you
Americans,
get going, let me just
yeah,
say bye to you, Dave. It was great talking to you,
you
man.
have a good one.
Please come back. I
Yeah,
really
well,
enjoyed it.
I
Really
think I
enjoyed it, man.
subscribed. I think I subscribed.
Really enjoyed it,
Yes,
man.
please do. Make sure you hit
Yeah,
the
I
like button.
subscribed. I
Okay,
All right,
cool.
so
subscribed.
let me get up out of here, Dave. I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just wanted to
No, you're
formally
good.
say goodbye to you, man. Have a good night. See y'all.
Thanks, Chuck, for
Yeah.
coming up.
Hmm.
So,
That
to
was
Chuck's
good.
point, I don't think that American liberals could survive here because somebody asked me in the chat, "What do Mongolians think about LGBTQ people?" Right, and I said,
Mhm,
"I just don't care. Keep it in your house."
mhm,
People here would consider me a moderate or a liberal for that stance. Gay marriage is not legal here, right? Sure, there are anti like hate laws,
mhm.
but the government doesn't enforce them, and there's like a little march. I want to say it's like in August or November or something. I haven't seen it, but there's like a cultural event, and gay people have their own little booth and they do their own little march. But from what I've been hearing and seeing online, and from what my wife has been telling me, the police will like harass them and won't protect them from people, right? So I don't think American liberals could survive here for that reason.
No,
um
they would
also
not.
also 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 American liberals have this weird bizarre hatred with Russia. There's a lot of Russian nationalists here. One of them actually lives a couple houses down from me,
Mhm,
right? There's because Mongolia gained its independence. I believe it was in 1911, but Russia helped them. Russia helped Mongolia
mhm.
liberate themselves from China. And, even to this day, there are a couple statues of Soviet era generals in different places, right? So
Oh,
you
wow.
will encounter a lot of Russians here.
Mhm,
There's Soviet era policies that are still here. The Mongolian People's Party, the president and prime minister both of which are of that party. It's predominantly based on Soviet history,
Wow,
right?
that's funny.
So like I don't think American liberals survive here. In my personal experience during like the Nadam festival, where a lot of tourists will come every year for the bulk wrestling, the horse archery, and all of that to see the
Mhm,
countryside. Most, I would say most, if not all of them, have been conservatives, American conservatives, just
mhm.
because there's a respect for culture and tradition in American conservatives that do not exist in liberals.
Yeah.
American liberals want to destroy tradition,
Mhm,
and I could tell you right now that if you like, if a foreigner were to come here and even make a joke about Chinggis Khan, or just make a joke just
mhm,
because they thought it was about Mongolian food, it
mhm.
would not end at all. Like the locals would probably beat them in a bar. That has happened.
Dang, that's
So
crazy.
that's
So
actually pretty common outside. It's pretty common outside of the U.S. too, because I mean, if you think about it from like the Christian perspective, right? As a Christian, I'm sure you've seen online many pastors go to India. They're not tolerated in India. You know
mm,
what I mean? Or you could
I
see
didn't
what's
know that was
going
a
on.
thing. I didn't know
Oh
that.
yeah, in India it's more violent than it is here. Things are a lot more
Mhm,
chill here. But like, just from the Christian perspective, I'm sure many people in the chat have seen people that they knew were people on Facebook who said, I went to this country to preach and to be a missionary, and I was
mhm.
arrested, or police, or people were harassing me, yada yada
Yeah.
yada. Right?
Mhm.
It's kind of a common thing. Wherever you go, you respect the culture, and liberals typically don't do that.
That's true. That's like the Brittany Griner thing, when she goes to Russia and before she leaves, she hates America, wants to kneel for the flag and all this stuff. And then she goes to another country and it's a culture shock because these people, they are in their bubble of privilege, honestly,
Mm.
black, white, or otherwise. America, if you live in America, if you are an American citizen, you have privilege, period. And when they see these other countries that exist, that where real poverty exists, where real tyranny exists, where real fascism exists, they are incapable of even comprehending what that is. I remember I was, like a clip or something I was looking at on Facebook or something, and it was Nicki Minaj, and she was telling how, like, her band or whatever was saying, listen, when you go to China, here's what you can and can't do. You know what I mean? Like, you have to know this. Don't get on a stage and be like, doing all your American stuff. Like,
Yeah,
you
you
better
can't you
know.
can't do that because I mean,
You cannot do that.
if I understand correctly, like Brittany Griner had medical marijuana with like a doctor's note.
Something like that. Yeah, I don't even know the
That
details.
is illegal in Russia. That is illegal here. Do not do that at
Yeah,
all. Period. Like all forms of cannabis, like a doctor's note in America means jack shit here. I don't know if I could
right.
swear, but it means jack shit here. It
We
does
prefer
not.
not to. This is a family Christian
Okay.
show.
My apologies, but it means nothing here, right? Do not do
Right.
this.
But
So,
these are the same people
mhm.
that will say, America is so racist. I am oppressed here. You have never experienced real oppression. And it's a slap in the face to the people that live in these other countries, who are stuck in those countries, who are facing real oppression. And it's just such a disconnect. It's ungrateful. Like, you chose to leave. Like, that's your business. That's your
Yeah.
prerogative. You chose to leave. Okay, fine. But it's the ones that stay here and constantly complain when you haven't even bothered to look at what other people actually go through to really have a good judgment of what your life is like in America. You can't compare America to America as far as nations are concerned and think you got the bad end of the deal. Where you're
Well,
not even
and
comparing it to
exactly,
anything else.
exactly. And to the person's question of the LGBTQIA, like whatever the acronym is now, like I said,
Mhm,
I don't care. Do you. As long as you're cool with me, I'm going to be cool with you. I don't care.
mhm,
But what's interesting is, gay people, trans people in America talk about fleeing the country of how bad it is. I was on Reddit, like, over now it's been like a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, where it's like I was on Reddit and be like, how do people think of Americans? What do they think about gay people? You know, I'm just researching because I want to know what Mongolians say. And like the comments on Mongolian Reddit and just Mongolians on Facebook who are gay, they are scared for their lives. They are terrified of their lives. They want to come to America because it's safer in America than it is here. And some of them were just shocked that gay people in America thought they were as oppressed as they are in the other world. And some of them like, hey, let's trade places and see how that works out. Right. And
Mhm.
like, I would not recommend that based off of my limited time here and what my wife has said. I would not recommend this. Right. I would not recommend, you know, because like I've heard, there is, I would say, and this is just my opinion, but from what I've seen, the stories I've heard, I would say there is still racism in America, and I would say racism in general is a problem,
For sure.
right? Because, you know,
I wouldn't say it's
especially
a
in the deep
problem, but
south.
I would
In
say
the
that
deep
it
south,
exists. I mean, just
yeah.
like any other sin,
Well,
it exists.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a thing, right?
Mhm.
And you know, I see black people like talking about, oh, well, we want to go to Asian countries and experience that, and I'm like, don't do that, right? Because I could take you, Keisha, to China. One of us is going to have a great time. The other one of us is not.
Mm,
And I say that because I've been to China,
mhm,
right? So, you know what I mean? And it's just interesting to see, right? Right. Like people
mhm,
do experience racism, and
mhm.
people do, I would say, I don't know enough about American history to know whether it's systemic, like whether it's a government level or not. I don't know that.
It's not.
But
Well,
I
okay, you know what? I let me I
but
take
to
that back.
finish my point real
Oh,
quick,
sorry,
but
go ahead.
just to finish my point real quick, having lived in other countries that are not Western countries,
Mhm.
I find it hard to believe that people in America, regardless of skin color, have it worse than people in other countries outside of the West, like Myanmar. You remember the genocide of Rohingya Muslims, right?
Mhm.
I mean, you've got tribal wars going on right now in Africa. South America, some places are great, other parts are entire like crap shows,
That's
right?
right. Mhm.
Right. And when you look
S-hole
at
country.
all of this, exactly, but it's like when you compare America to other countries,
Right.
sure you can compare America to Scandinavian countries. Okay, you
Mhm.
can because they're Western and they're first world. But the problem with that is, like Chuck was saying, they are homogenous. If you go to Finland, it's 99.99% Finnish, and they don't even talk to each other, let alone you, because they're lone wolves, right?
And that's what I
So,
was gonna oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'm
no,
sorry.
that was my point. That was my point.
But and that's that's the problem. It's people really don't know and understand what other countries are like. Thomas Sowell talked about this in Malaysia, where he was like, Malaysia, there's like this, I can't even remember like the two distinct groups, but they're all Malaysian. But there was like this racism within Malaysia. It's just a thing. It's a human condition. You know, if you are expecting some perfect whatever, some perfect utopia, some perfect nation, America's probably the best you're gonna get as far as the freedom. Now, again, I know you moved and you know, I would not want to give up my freedoms, even with the problems that we have here in America. For me, I don't think that that's a good trade off. But the great thing about in this being an American, if you can do what you did and go and explore and do
Mhm.
and go and live wherever you want, you know, and so people can do that. But that is the problem. We're not educated on how these countries actually function, and I'm going to stick with Black Americans because
Mhm.
that's where like where I'm focused and what I see the most. They are so uneducated on how, on so many things, how the family is supposed to work, how money is supposed to work, or how money works, and how other countries function. So much ignorance, but they want to make these grandiose claims about this country and other nations with zero evidence, none, and pretty much their assumptions are all wrong. Like with the guy that you're talking about, we I used to do this show called Through the Culture with Chad O. Jackson. Chuck was on there, and a man, Blanche Robinson. And when we were doing the show, we would have these clips and show these clips of people saying those types of things, just completely ignorant. One guy said, black guy was like, yeah, I got a scholarship to go to college. It was like a $5 million scholarship. It's like, you did not get a $5 million scholarship to go to college. You are a liar. It is just made up out of whole cloth. But no one holds, Black Americans, and I'm speaking generally, but nobody holds Black Americans to account. No one. Look at the Carmelo Anthony case. Like, this is a perfect example of a Black guy who does something incredibly harmful, and literally all the Black people come out of the community to uplift him, to hold him up, to campaign for him, even when evidence and police report, but even before the trial, you could read the police report, you could read all of these, you could gather the data of what we had, and you could see pretty much what happened. Black Americans, American Blacks, don't want to face that reality. And that is like why I'm on this kick. I'm like, this idol must come down, because if you don't take this thing down, you won't ever be able to see life properly. It's like a blinder over your eyes, where you can't really see life and reality. It's like that you're living in a delusion. If you think, in like somebody, for instance, the Carmelo Anthony case, that this dude was just minding his business and he was it's just fiction. Like, it's just fiction. And a lot of this stuff comes from the Black church, a lot, because in America, American Blacks, the church is like the nucleus, and it's been infiltrated by Marxists. And so the community is still, gathered around the church, but they're getting all this bad information. And so,
Yeah, and I mean, with the Carmelo Anthony case, like, someone asked me how that would have gone down here, and it would have been very, very different. So, from a legal perspective, he would have gotten less time and he would have been put in a juvenile facility.
mm,
However, the problem
mhm,
there's a fundamental difference in law. For instance, Texas does allow you to carry a knife. I think it's like 3.5 inches,
mhm,
right, on your person,
mhm.
and it's legal. It is illegal to carry a knife in Ulaanbaatar unless you have a permit that demonstrates it's for work or something else.
Oh,
It is
wow.
illegal to have a knife on your person for self-defense. Self-defense is classified under the Criminal Code of Mongolia as necessary defense. So, because if this happened here and Metcalf, even if he punched him, he would automatically be given a guilty verdict for two reasons. One, it
Oh,
does not meet necessary defense because there's no lethal force. So you cannot
mhm,
use a lethal weapon under any circumstances. There
mhm,
is no threat to life. There's no severe threat to like property, person, etc. But the
mhm.
second thing is here in Mongolia, and you guys can look this up. If you are in a court, you are not judged by 12 of your peers. You are judged by a panel of judges that read the Mongolian law. And they will compare your case to Mongolian law. Now, Keisha's laughing, and I'm pretty sure I know what you're thinking, but if you guys aren't familiar with, in America, that's called a tribunal.
You're right. Like,
Um,
it's like going before
so
the Supreme Court.
now, exactly. Now you will have a lawyer, but because of the way that this case went down, and I did a ton of research on this, and I compared and contrasted, and threw it into AI, and I talked with my wife, who is family and you know the legal sphere, right? I'm like, how would have this gone down? Right. So from what it looks like, the only case they could have done to get a not guilty verdict in America was claim self-defense.
Mhm.
He could not have done here, therefore the guilty verdict is the only option.
Wow.
Right. And so what would have happened is the sentencing, right?
Mhm.
So it would have been likely 10 to 12 years because he was a juvenile and he would be put in a juvenile facility. But here in Mongolia, it is different than in America because in America, after you serve your time, you can get a job and there will people who will give you a job. There will be people who support you.
Mhm.
Here in Mongolia, again, we have the digital ID that's a part of what's called e-Mongolia, founded in 2012. Um, Employers, hospitals, banks, everybody would see that guilty verdict. And that guilty verdict would play a role in housing, in banking for sure, because many countries, including America, having worked in a bank, is like, anti money laundering and things like that, right?
Mhm.
Obviously, American banks are big on that. Here in Mongolia, from what my wife says, banks would not give him a bank account because he's a convicted criminal. So why would they set themselves up for financial, like money laundering or aiding and
Right.
abetting future criminal activity? Also, I'd have to double check on this and get clarification, but from my limited understanding, and I could be wrong, but from my limited understanding, the government could prevent him if he was here from getting married, right? So if he's a Mongolian man and he's convicted of a crime, you have to go through the marriage process, and that involves a criminal background check. And at any point, the government can deny it. That's why I need to get clarification on this. I can't say for sure, but my
Mhm.
guess is, and this is a guess, but if a criminal background check is a part of the marriage process and the government can deny that process at any time,
Mhm.
my guess is that that criminal background, that criminal document could be a factor in the denying of the marriage,
Wow.
right? I could be wrong on
So
that particular.
basically his whole okay, he would do the 10 to 12 years, but his whole life would essentially be ruined. But
Yes,
so
and
but
I've
there would be no physical punishment for him in Mongolia.
correct. It would be just 10 to 12 years in a general. So it's,
Okay.
and in America, he could appeal it on the grounds of self defense. In Mongolia, you cannot because, again, it does not apply.
Mhm.
Right. Now, again, this is just what I've researched. This is what I've thrown together. I'm not a legal expert. I do not claim to be a
Yeah.
lawyer. I was going off of what little I've seen here. But that just goes to show that other countries have very similar processes and are much more harsher because there's the aspect of social punishment that does not exist in America. And people don't take that into account. And so the Carmelo Anthony case, and this is just my opinion, my personal opinion, I think it's a tragic case.
Oh, it is. For
I mean,
sure.
he was a child that made, because he's a child under the law, he made a grown man decision and got grown man consequences when he threw that knife in the bag and went to school where that's not allowed, right?
That's
Fine.
right.
But overall, in the long run, he can appeal. There are legal there's legal recourse that he has,
Mhm.
right? He can get support from the community because of that lack of social punishment. Whereas in many countries, generally speaking, especially in Asia, if you are accused of a crime, you're on your own. If you are accused of a crime, you're on your own because many countries are not individualistic like America. Many
Mhm.
countries are focused on the family and what your actions do, especially as a male,
Mm.
reflect upon the family.
Mhm.
Right. So
Mm.
if it was
Mhm.
here, his actions would have reflected on his mother as well as how his father raised him. And people may look at his father as like, well, your son did this. Why should I do
Mhm.
business with you? Clearly, you raised him wrong. Why can I do business with you? Because I can't trust you to raise a child. Why should I trust your business acumen? Right.
I think, and this is my opinion, I don't know this to be fact, but
Mhm.
I think that Black Americans are probably the only group in America that literally uplifts and supports criminals. Like, I don't even see, white people supporting like a Kim Kardashian in this way, like, oh, like I don't see them like how because of her, because of like the raunchiness and the sex tape, I don't see this, like the men are that they are like, oh yeah, Kim Kardashian because of her background. I see black men that are attracted to, I'm just not all, and this is not an all thing, but there is something within Black American culture that has now over the last, I don't know, maybe 50, since the 60s, lifted up the decadent behavior. It is, I don't see other cultures doing this. And so it would, I think it would be similar to how other, to like in my, not maybe not to that extreme, but other cultures probably, like let's say Carmelo was white, and I don't think white people or any other, let's say he was any other race, I don't think that they would be like, oh yes, let's raise, all this money for him, knowing what the evidence showed. I just don't see
Well, I'm going to push back on that respectfully. I would disagree because I lived in Utah,
it. Mm-hmm.
and in the Mormon community, that is a thing. So I would respectfully say, and I've never been to Texas, but I've lived in Utah,
Mm-hmm.
and there have been cases when it comes to like sexual assault, for instance, with one of the BYU captains. That's a big thing right now. There's a ton of Mormon support for him, white people pouring out of the woodwork to defend him.
Mm.
He's still obviously guilty, and everyone outside of Utah and outside the Mormon church is kind of like, why are we doing, he's clearly guilty, why are you supporting him, why are you raising all this money? All right. Somebody point out that they raised hundreds of thousands of dollars and are grifting. I mean, I can't, it's, I would say it's odd, but I can't legally or even just consciously say it's a grift because I don't know their intent, right? But what I do know is just past historical things where there have been cases of white people. I mean, you want to look at, since I brought up Mormons, you look at Ted Bundy, right? Ted Bundy killed women, right? And he was arrested in Utah originally, and he had one of his quote unquote rape kits with him with an axe, a knife, rope, and stuff. And this was all put out in the news, but
Mm-hmm.
white Mormons came out in force saying, no, he wouldn't do this. That's not true, yada,
Yeah.
yada, yada, right? So I don't think it's a black person thing. I think I think it's a human thing. Right.
Mm.
I don't think it's unique to black people. I don't think it's unique to white people. I've seen this in other countries too. I just
Well, I
my
wouldn't say
opinion.
that. I'm
Go ahead.
sorry. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, and it's like I think it's a human thing because human beings to some extent are tribal,
Mm-hmm.
right? And human beings look out for their own, and especially when it comes to like cases of like different races, not just white and black, but I mean like, in general, right? If it was, I don't know, if it was a Muslim and an Indian, the Indians would rally around the Indian, the Muslims would rather around the Muslim, right? And there'd be this whole like crap show, right?
I don't know
Um,
about that. Like, I don't. Okay. I'm not saying that no other. When I say you don't see other groups doing this, I don't mean that like zero people do it, or you have, you know, sections of people that do it. I mean, broadly speaking, in the black community, broadly speaking, criminals, it's free. It's all, you might not see this, but every other week, it's free this person, free that person, and they're all guilty. Like the hashtags, crazy. The Black Lives Matter. These people were literally burning buildings down, causing billion. This is not new. Like, this is a decades long thing that we have seen in with Black Americans. Okay,
mhm.
this is not something that we see just kind of a trend. Yes, you have your instances, and you might have like pockets of people groups and things like that, but I don't think to the extent do we see that we see Black Americans. It's literal in black when I was growing up.
Mhm.
If you were smart, if you were if you did well on your test, if you spoke correct English, if you were on time, if you were an upstanding student, you got made fun of by black kids. You were cool if you were, a perpetual rule breaker and always getting in trouble, and just a class clown. You're not trying to do anything with your life. You're not trying to do, you that person gets they big that person up. Right now, when Ben Carson, most black Americans were poo-pooing him. They were saying he's an Uncle Tom, and the dude is like a successful surgeon, like has done incredible things, like the first surgeon to separate, conjoined twins and all that. Black people will say that man is a sellout, an Uncle Tom, and some other words too. But take a OJ Simpson, and we gotta go and campaign and protest for OJ. That's what I'm talking. Like, this is
Yeah.
long. This, I'm not talking about like, oh, here it is with Carmelo. No, you can probably go on Facebook right now and just put hashtag free. Just put the word free, and you'll see a whole bunch of black people come up who are guilty, and you got all these people that saying that they need to be freed. It's crazy. It is insane. It's unique.
Yeah, and I think one of the issues that I'm having is like it's hard to make one for one comparisons, and maybe I shouldn't have made those comparisons to begin with because they are fundamentally different.
Mhm.
So I can own that, but yeah, I do know, like, when it comes to cases of, like, in Utah specifically, because the state is owned by the Mormons, there's a lot of shenanigans. I
Yeah.
actually have one predominantly ex-Mormon podcast talking about this,
Mhm.
right? There's a lot of shenanigans that goes on in the legal system, and there's a lot of jury rigging and things like that that has been
Sure.
documented and proven. And Utah is very, very much white.
Mhm.
So I don't know. For me, I see what you're saying. For me, it could go either way, honestly.
I wonder if
Right.
it's Mormon, because the Mormon religion is mostly white. I wonder if it's Mormon and not what, because I don't see
It could be.
that
I'll fully
type of.
admit that it might be. I'm not like, I know more about Mormonism than I do like the deep dive of like Christianity that you probably know. I know more
Mhm.
about Mormonism than I do that. It
Oh,
very well could be, and I'll fully admit that.
because
So,
we don't consider Mormons a true Christian faith.
oh, I'm aware of that. Yeah, I'm
Okay.
definitely aware of that.
And
Yeah, I'm
no
aware of
shade to
that.
the
So,
Mormons. We love you. We want you saved, but
yeah,
it's just we don't see how
yeah,
they have another Bible. They have different doctrine. It's different.
yeah,
But I think I would, from what I can tell, I don't see that outside of, just like, I don't know, Montana. You know what I
yeah,
mean? Like, where somebody commits a crime, they're like, yeah, free them. You just don't see it. It's weird. It's not. It's We got a lot of work to do, but it is.
yeah.
It's almost 11. The time just flies by so freaking fast when we do these things, and I want to read these super chats. I'm going to go ahead and bring you down, Dave, but thanks
All
for
right. Thank
coming
you for
by.
having me on. I appreciate you.
Absolutely. If you have more questions, or this is I really enjoyed the conversation. And stretching our own minds, you asking questions that we hadn't really thought about yet, and so I appreciate that.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Absolutely. All right. See you later.
Have a good one.
All right, you guys. Now, for those of you who have been on the show and you wanted to come up and do your thing, you see how nice Dave was? Do you see how respectful he was? We didn't agree. He's not a Christian. He lives in a whole nother country. But do you see how we were able to have a respectful back and forth, a robust conversation, and it didn't have to get all nasty? And I saw Ryan in the comments. Take note. Bottom line, take note. Okay. Thank you, Dave. Thank you. Well, thank you. Well done. I wish we could have more like that. That was awesome. Yeah, so I do want to read these super chats. Oh, I'm sorry. Tam said, when you stop, did I read this already? Thank you, Tam, for your $5 super chat. When you stop being of the world and start living for God, you get peace in your heart and soul. When you stop being of the world and start living for God, you get peace in your heart and soul. You can't subvert God's way. We can try. You can try to subvert his way, but it just never works out. Trust me, I tried, and save yourself some trouble. Just save yourself some trouble. Just don't do it. Okay. Hans Gruber, 1988. Thank you for the $5 super chat. Says, good ideas. Voter ID, campaign finance reform, term limits in Congress, and elected officials can't actively trade stocks for X years in or out of office. Voter ID for sure. Campaign finance reform. Okay. I don't really like to get in telling people how to spend their money all like that. But international stuff, absolutely, that needs to be cracked down on. Let's see, term limits in Congress. I used to be torn on that because the whole point is for we, the people, to vote these people out if we don't want them. So I think that was the point. It's. I'm just gonna leave that one alone. I do agree on the trading the stocks and all that. Definitely agree with that. And last but not least, thank you so much, honey. Thank you, darling. I love you so much for the $10 super sticker. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Antonio. That's my husband, whom I love very much. Ooh, we had, I couldn't even keep up, like trying to multitask in the chat and in all the things. Okay, DT says good night. He probably said that a while ago that I didn't even see. Candy Ratone, thanks for coming by. You seems like you're new here. Paul, hey friend. He says they scam people, talking about the Anthony's, they scam people out of hundreds of thousands of dollars and still grifting. I do believe that they have another GoFundMe or Gibson Go thing up. Mystic Marks, he's talking to Kate. He says lost souls are akin to demons embodied and do lots of damage with the evil falling out of their selfish chaos. Kay walking into a conversation there. William, hi William McAnally, thank you for being here. Katie says, let's just say there are Luciferians that made their presence known. That is true. Luciferians are definitely have made their presence known. We see it all the time. We see a lot of that stuff. Megan says, I used to be a punk, but the cool kind with spikes and mosh pits. Okay. Katie says, I'm very thankful to my Father in heaven for preserving me alive through all of that. Amen. Amen. Let's see. Megan says tribalism is more the norm in terms of human nature. Yes, I believe that is true. Yeah, tribalism, we group, being in groups and working and finding things in common with people, and then you want to stick to that. Let's see. Reading a few more. Ryan Taylor's here. Hello, Ryan. Let's see. Carmen. Hi, Carmen. What's going on? And I guess that is Dave's channel there. Diamond David. No, it says, Keisha, did you see my ring story when you did your story in another video? I did not. It has been so crazy. Like, it's a lot been going on. I haven't even shared all the things. It's been a lot. So That's why I haven't been so active in the chat. I normally am more active, throughout the week when we get off. Let's see. Carmen says, Keisha, my granddaughter Lovey says hi. Hi, Lovey. Hi there, granddaughter. Oh, that's so sweet. Hey, boo, hey. Let's see. All right. I think Uncle Tom talks. Hey, I didn't see you in there. Bricks and minifigs is a Mormon cover-up example, but it's done more in Black communities. Bricks and minifigs. I don't know about that. I've never heard of that. Yeah, but as far as I really do. I mean, you guys can let me know. I see that this happens a lot in Black communities, just crime, just whatever crime, bigging that up and just not saying anything. I don't really see that in other communities. Maybe it's there and I'm just not seeing it, but I'm not seeing the evidence where that's what happens. But all right, you guys, thank you so much for being here. Be on the lookout for videos for tomorrow. When this video ends, please go back and hype the video. Hit the like button if you have not. Share this video out if you have not. I will see you on Friday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Thank you guys so much for your support and for watching and all you do. We'll see you on Friday. Bye-bye.